The bride who said no, a helicopter, a secret, and the wedding that never happened. 2 hours before she was supposed to say, "I do," Lena Carter locked herself inside the bridal suite of the most expensive hotel in Crestwood Harbor and typed 7 words into her phone. "If you still want me, come get me." She hit send to a number she hadn't dialed in 7 years. Her wedding dress hung on the door like a ghost. 300 guests waited downstairs. Her fiancé was a monster wearing a tailored suit, and the boy she'd buried in her memory? He was her only way out. If you're watching this story, please hit that like button, subscribe for more, and drop a comment telling me what city you're tuning in from. I love seeing how far my stories travel. Now stay with me until the very end, because what happens at that altar will leave you speechless. The rain had started just after 4 in the morning, and by the time the sky over Crestwood Harbor began to lighten into that pale, bruised gray particular to coastal Octobers, the streets were slick, and the gutters were gurgling, and the flower trucks were arriving at the Ashford Grand with their hazards blinking. Lena Carter watched them from the window of Suite 1204, with her forehead pressed against the glass and her breath fogging a small cloud that kept disappearing and reappearing. And she thought, quite clearly, I am not going to survive this. She had not slept. She had not really eaten in 2 days. On the glass-topped vanity behind her sat a half-drunk cup of coffee gone cold, a bottle of water she'd opened and forgotten, and a small white envelope with her name written on it in her mother's handwriting. The envelope had been there when she arrived last night at 11, and she had not opened it. She suspected it contained a letter about love or duty or what it means to be a woman on her wedding day, and she suspected that if she read it, she would throw up. The dress hung on a padded hanger hooked over the top of the bathroom door. $18,000 of imported silk and hand-stitched lace, selected in a showroom in Manhattan with her future mother-in-law nodding approvingly from a velvet chair. It was beautiful. It was also, Lena had decided sometime around 3 a.m., the closest thing she had ever seen to a burial shroud. Her phone sat face down on the windowsill. She had been staring at it, or staring past it, for the better part of an hour. Somewhere 2 floors below, her mother was probably drinking champagne and laughing too loudly at something her Aunt Marjorie had said. Somewhere on the 14th floor, her fiancé, Damien Vale, was probably still asleep in the presidential suite, because Damien Vale was the kind of man who could sleep through anything. Earthquakes, stock market crashes, his own wedding morning, women crying in rooms down the hall. She had found out about the other life 12 days ago. 12 days! That was the math that kept running through her head like a song she couldn't turn off. 12 days ago she had been, as far as she knew, engaged to a slightly boring but fundamentally decent man who ran a private equity fund his father had left him, and who had once, on their second date, cried a little when he told her about his mother dying. 12 days ago she had been picking out napkin colors. 11 days ago she had opened a drawer in his home office looking for a pen, and found, instead, a second phone. She turned from the window and walked to the vanity and sat down, not because she wanted to sit down, but because her legs had stopped working properly, and she needed to be closer to the floor. In the mirror, a stranger looked back at her. Dark circles the color of bruises. Skin the color of paper. Hair pinned up at the crown because the stylist would be here in 40 minutes to put the final touches in. And Lena, good girl that she was, had done the prep work. "You're a coward," she said aloud to the stranger in the mirror. Her voice came out hoarse. "You're a coward, and you're going to do it anyway." The stranger didn't disagree. She opened the top drawer of the vanity. Inside, under a folded hand towel, was the phone. Not her phone. The other one. The burner she had bought at a gas station in Riverton 8 days ago with cash, because some instinct she hadn't understood at the time had told her not to use anything traceable. She turned it over in her hands. It was cheap, the plastic cheap, the screen cheap, and somehow its cheapness felt like the only honest thing in the entire suite. She pressed the power button. The screen lit up. No missed calls, no messages. Of course there were no messages. She hadn't given the number to anybody. The question was whether she was going to give it to him now. 7 years. 7 years she had not spoken to Ryder Hayes. 7 years she had not said his name out loud, and only written it down once. In a journal she had later burned in her parents' fireplace during a Christmas she couldn't remember anything else about. 7 years of pretending she had forgotten the shape of his hands, and the particular way he used to stand with his weight on his back foot, like he was always about to leave. And the low, rough catch in his voice when he said her name and meant it. She had a number for him. Of course she had a number for him. She had kept it memorized the way other people keep the combination to their high school locker. The way some people can still recite phone numbers from before area codes. It was the only phone number in the world that lived in her head instead of her contacts. She had promised herself, at 17, that she would never call it. She had promised herself at 24 the same thing, and again at 26, and again last New Year's Eve when she had been drunk on her best friend's balcony and watching fireworks over the harbor and feeling a grief she couldn't explain. Now she was 31 years old and about to marry a man who had a closet full of audio recordings of his business associates' wives, and a set of bank accounts in 3 countries she hadn't known existed, and a locked cabinet in his office that contained a handgun and a ledger, and photographs of people who, she strongly suspected, were no longer alive. She started typing. "If you still want me, come get me." Her thumb hovered over the send button. She thought about her mother downstairs. She thought about the 300 guests. She thought about her father, who had walked her through the venue last night, his hand on her elbow, and told her he was proud of her with tears in his eyes. And she thought about how her father did not know, could not know, what Damien was. She thought about Damien's business partner, a man named Rollins, who had looked at her last Christmas the way a dog looks at a piece of meat it's been told to wait for. She thought about the second phone in the drawer. She thought about the night, 6 days ago, when Damien had sat her down on the white leather sofa in his penthouse and told her calmly, almost kindly, that he knew she knew and that she would marry him anyway, and had then explained exactly why. She pressed send. The little arrow swooshed across the screen, and the message went. And for a long moment, Lena Carter sat very still on a silk-cushioned vanity chair in Suite 1204 of the Ashford Grand and listened to her own heartbeat, and nothing at all, happened. She had met Ryder Hayes when she was 17 years old, and he was 18. And neither of them knew yet what they were going to become. She remembered the summer in pieces. The pieces had survived every attempt she'd made to dismantle them. There was a gas station off Route 9 with a neon sign that buzzed. There was a diner called Hal's where a waitress named Dottie had known Ryder by name and had called Lena Sugar and had refilled her coffee without being asked. There was a Chevy pickup, the color of a faded pumpkin that Ryder had been fixing up for his uncle, and a radio in the truck that only got one station, an AM channel that played bluegrass on Sundays and classic country the rest of the week, and Ryder had not apologized for it, not once, even when Lena had teased him. Her parents had hated him, not in a dramatic way. Her parents were too well-mannered for drama. Her mother had hated him in the way of tight smiles at dinner parties and casual mentions of how nice it must be to be from a simpler family. Her father had hated him in the way of firm handshakes that went a beat too long. Her older brother Peter had hated him the most openly, and had once, at a 4th of July barbecue, cornered Ryder near the pool house and said something quiet and ugly that Ryder had never repeated to her. What her parents hadn't known, what none of them had known, was that Ryder had been the only person in her entire life who had ever looked at her like she was a full human being instead of a Carter. The Carters of Crestwood Harbor, the Carters of the yacht club and the hospital wing and the foundation and the house on the point. Ryder had not given a single damn about any of it. He had looked at her on a Tuesday afternoon in July, in the cab of that pumpkin-colored truck with the windows rolled down and the smell of the bay coming in, and he had said, "What do you actually want to do, Lena, if nobody was watching, if nobody was making the list?" Nobody had ever asked her that. She hadn't had an answer. She remembered being ashamed of not having an answer. He had left in September. She had not seen it coming. Or, that wasn't true. She had seen it coming the way you see a storm coming, the sky changing color, the birds going quiet, and you tell yourself it's probably nothing. He had shown up at her dorm one afternoon, 3 weeks into her freshman year at Whitaker College, and he had stood in the lobby with his hands in the pockets of a jacket she had never seen before, and he had told her he was going away. She remembered she had laughed at first, a short, disbelieving laugh, like he'd told a joke that didn't land. Going where? Away. Ryder, I can't explain it. Not now, maybe not ever. I just need you to know it's not you. That's what people say when it's them. He had not smiled. That was the part that had scared her the most, even at the time. Ryder had always smiled when she pushed at him, even a little. Lena, he had said, and his voice had done the catching thing, and he had taken one step closer and then stopped himself visibly, like he'd touched an electric fence. If I could stay, I'd stay. If there was a version of this where I got to keep you, I'd pick that one every time. There isn't. Who's stopping you? I'll tell you someday. Ryder, I promise. I promise, Lena. Someday. He had left. He had walked out of the lobby of Patterson Hall and gotten into a car she hadn't recognized, and she had stood at the window of the lobby with her arms wrapped around her ribs and watched the taillights go. And then she had gone upstairs, and she had not cried, not right away, because some part of her was still convinced it was a misunderstanding. She would call him in the morning. She would call him in the morning, and he would answer. He had not answered. Not in the morning, not that afternoon, not that week. The number had stopped working sometime around Thursday. His uncle's garage, when she finally worked up the nerve to call, said Ryder had moved and had not left a forwarding address. Hal at the diner said he had come in and said goodbye and paid his tab and left a $20 tip on a $6 check. Dottie had cried a little, telling her that. For a while, a long while. Lena had believed she was going to die of it. Not literally. She understood even at 18 that people did not generally die of heartbreak. But something in her had quietly stopped working, and she had not known how to start it again. And she had gone home for Thanksgiving that year, and her mother had taken one look at her face and said, "Darling, you really need to start meeting better people." It had taken Lena almost 10 years to realize her mother had meant Damien. The burner phone sat on the vanity. 15 minutes had passed. Then 20. She stood up. She sat down. She stood up again and paced to the window and back. Outside, the rain had stopped, and watery sunlight was breaking through the clouds in pale yellow stripes across the harbor. Somewhere a gull was screaming. On the bedside table, the house phone rang, and she flinched so hard she bumped the vanity and knocked the cold coffee over into the carpet. "Shit," she whispered, and then she walked across the room and picked up the receiver. "Lena, honey, it's Mom." Her mother's voice was bright with the particular brightness Margaret Carter reserved for occasions that required performance. "Are you up, sweetheart? Marisol is on her way up with the steamer for the Vale, and I thought I'd come a little early, and we could have a quiet moment together before... I need a few more minutes." Of course. Are you all right?" "I'm fine." "Lena." "I'm fine, Mom. I need a few minutes." "Are you eating?" "Yes." She wasn't eating. There was a pause on the line, and in the pause, Lena could hear the faint sound of a string quartet warming up somewhere below them. A few bars of something Baroque drifting up through the hotel's ductwork. Her mother, she could tell, was choosing between versions of herself. The brittle version and the soft version. Margaret Carter had a soft version. Lena had met her twice, both times at funerals. "Darling," her mother said finally, and her voice had lowered. "I know today is a lot. I know it feels like a lot. When I married your father, I sat on the edge of the bathtub at the plaza for 45 minutes and cried so hard my mother had to redo my makeup 3 times. It's all right to be frightened. But this, Lena, this is a good life you're stepping into. Damien is a good man. He adores you. Everything is going to be... I have to go. Lena, I love you." She hung up. She stood by the bed with her hand still on the receiver, and she listened to her own breathing, and she thought about how her mother had said, "Damien is a good man," the way someone might say the stove is off, like a thing confirmed, a thing taken care of. And she wondered if there was any possible version of this day in which she told her mother the truth. "He's not a good man, Mom. He's not a good man at all. He has hurt people. He has made people disappear. He has a drawer full of things I am not supposed to know about, and he told me 6 nights ago that if I embarrass him today, he will ruin Daddy. He will ruin the foundation. He will ruin Peter. He will ruin every single one of us. And he can, Mom. He actually can." She could not tell her mother any of that. Not because her mother would not believe her. Her mother might, in fact, believe her. But because her mother would say, "Well, darling, you should have been more careful," and she would mean it kindly, and it would kill something in Lena that had been dying for a long time already. The burner phone on the vanity buzzed. Lena did not move. It buzzed again. She walked across the room like a person walking through water. She picked up the phone. She looked at the screen. "On my way." 3 words. From a number she had not seen in 7 years. Her knees did the thing again, the stopping working thing, and she sat down very suddenly on the edge of the bed and she put one hand over her mouth, and she made a sound she did not recognize. It was not crying, it was something older than crying, something raw from underneath, and she sat there on the white duvet in her slip and her stocking feet, and she made the sound and she stared at the three words on the screen of a gas station phone, and she did not know yet whether what she was feeling was hope or terror. The phone buzzed a third time. Do not get in the car with him. Do not get in any car. Stay where you are. Whatever he says, you don't have to believe it. I'm coming. She read it twice. She read it a third time. Then she stood up and she walked into the bathroom and she threw up into the marble sink until there was nothing left. And when she straightened and looked in the mirror, her mascara was gone and her face was wet. And for the first time in 12 days, she looked almost like a person. Damien Vale had proposed to her on a rooftop in Positano with a ring that had once belonged to an Italian countess, and he had done it exactly right. Exactly right. There was a violinist. There were candles. There was a photographer her mother had secretly booked, crouched at a discreet distance, who had captured the moment she said yes with the sun going down behind her and her hair blown back from her face in a soft, cinematic gust. Lena had seen the photograph later, and she had barely recognized the woman in it. She had said yes because she had been 29 years old and exhausted, and because Damien had done every single thing a man was supposed to do, and because her mother had cried in Italian at the dinner table, and because on paper Damien Vale was the final answer to a question Lena had been asked her entire life. Who are you going to marry, Lena? Have you thought about your future, Lena? Are you seeing anyone, Lena? The question had followed her since she was 22. Damien had been the first man to make the question stop. In the year and a half of their engagement, she had told herself over and over, like a person practicing an instrument, that being loved in a calm, orderly, predictable way was the kind of love adults chose, and that the other kind, the kind she had felt once at 17 in the cab of a pumpkin-colored truck, had been a thing of adolescence, a thing you outgrew, a thing you were supposed to outgrow. She had told herself that you didn't marry the fire, you married the hearth. The fire was for when you were young and stupid. The hearth was for the rest of your life. And for a while, for a long while, she had almost believed it. Damien had a low, pleasant laugh. He opened doors. He remembered her father's whiskey preference. He had taken her to Paris for her 30th birthday, and he had bought her a painting she had admired at a gallery in the Marais without telling her, and it had arrived at her apartment a week later wrapped in brown paper. He was kind to waiters. He was kind to his assistant. He was kind, it seemed, to everyone. What she had not known, what she had not been in any position to know, was that Damien Vale was kind in the way a certain kind of predator is kind, with the deliberate patience of a thing that has all the time in the world. She had not known about Valentina, the assistant who had quit without notice and moved to Lisbon. She had not known about the two forensic accountants who worked for Damien's father's old firm who had been found, in separate incidents, in the same river. She had not known that her own engagement ring had been appraised by a jeweler who had subsequently declined to do any further business with the Vale family and who had 6 months later closed his shop and moved to Arizona for what he told his daughter were health reasons. The first thing she had found in the drawer 11 days ago was the phone. She had opened the drawer because she had wanted a pen. Damien had been in the shower. She had been sitting at his desk in her bathrobe writing a thank you note to her aunt for an early wedding gift, and she had run out of ink, and she had opened the drawer expecting to find a spare pen, and instead she had found the phone. It was not her phone. She knew every phone Damien owned. Damien had, she had thought, 3. His personal, his work, and an old one he kept charged as a backup. This was a 4th. It was slim and black and unmarked. She had picked it up because she hadn't known what else to do, and the screen had lit up and it had not been locked. Sometimes she wondered now if he had left it unlocked on purpose, if some small, decent, dying part of him had wanted her to know. She had opened the messages. She had read, she thought later, probably 20 of them before she set the phone down. 20 was plenty. 20 was more than plenty. 20 was a lifetime. She had closed the drawer. She had walked out of his office. She had gone into his kitchen and poured herself a glass of water and drunk it standing at the sink. And then she had rinsed the glass and dried it and put it away because a different person lived in her body now. And that person had understood, immediately, that if Damien suspected she had seen what she had seen, she would not live to the end of the week. When he had come out of the shower, his hair damp and his robe open at the collar, she had smiled at him. She had smiled at him, and she had made him an espresso, and she had asked him how his morning had been, and they had eaten breakfast together on the terrace, and she had not once, let her hand shake. She had learned that much, at least, growing up a Carter. How to hold a cup. The suite door clicked. The little indicator light on the keypad flashed green and the door swung open, and Marisol, Lena's stylist, came in with a rolling cart and a steamer and a pleasant, cheerful face. "Good morning, gorgeous girl. Oh, honey, your mascara." Marisol set down the steamer. "Have you been crying?" "A little." "Sweetie. Oh, sweetie, come here. No, sit. Let me fix it. Is your mama giving you a hard time? Is it your dress? What's going on?" "Just nerves. Everybody has nerves. Everybody. My sister threw up in a plant the morning of her wedding, a big ficus, right in the lobby of the church." Marisol pulled a chair up to the vanity and began, efficiently, expertly, rebuilding Lena's face with small brushes and a selection of powders from a zippered case. "You're going to be the most beautiful bride I've ever put a veil on, Miss Carter." "I keep telling my husband," I said, "the Carter girl, she has a face like the old movies. You know who you remind me of? That actress, the one in the black and white film with the husband who tries to poison her." "Marisol," Lena's voice came out flat. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything, honey." "Have you ever—" Lena stopped. She was looking at Marisol's hands. Marisol had very small, very capable hands, and a wedding band on her left ring finger that had clearly been resized more than once. "Have you ever done a wedding and known, while you were doing the bride's makeup, that the bride didn't want to be there?" The brush paused, just for a second. Then Marisol resumed, a little slower. "Once," she said. "What did you do?" "I finished her makeup." "Oh," she asked me to. She said, "Marisol, I know what you're thinking, and I want you to just finish the makeup." So I did. And then she walked down the aisle, and she married the man, and 6 months later she left him. Marisol took a small sable brush and set a fine dusting of powder along Lena's cheekbone. "You know why I think about her sometimes? Because I think if I had said something that morning, in the suite, she would have done it anyway. She wanted to do it anyway. Some brides, they need to walk down the aisle before they can walk back up it. You understand?" "Yes." "It's okay to be scared, Miss Carter." "Marisol." "If I ran," Lena said, very quietly, "would you tell them which way I went?" The brush stopped entirely this time. Marisol looked at Lena in the mirror. Her expression had changed. It had gone from kind stylist professional to something else, something much older, a look Lena had sometimes seen on her grandmother's face before her grandmother had died. "Miss Carter," Marisol said, "I have been doing brides for 26 years. I have worked 400 weddings. I have been asked many strange questions in bridal suites, but I have never, not once, been asked that one. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Look at me. Look at me." Marisol took Lena's chin between her fingers, very gently. Her hand smelled faintly of rose water and setting powder. "I would tell them," she said, "that I went into the bathroom to rinse out my brushes, and when I came back you were gone. That's what I would tell them. That is exactly what I would tell them. Do you understand?" Lena's eyes filled. "Don't cry. Don't cry, honey. You'll ruin it again. Here. Marisol dabbed at Lena's eyes with a tissue. "I'm going to finish your face. I'm going to steam your dress. I'm going to do my job. And then I am going to go into that bathroom, and I am going to rinse my brushes for a very, very long time." Lena could not speak. "You breathe now, Miss Carter." Marisol's voice was matter-of-fact. "You breathe, and you let me work. Whatever you're going to do, you can do it better with your eyeliner even." Oh. At 10:47 a.m., the burner phone buzzed again. Lena, who was now sitting on the chaise by the window with the phone pressed between her palms, looked down at the screen. 20 minutes out. Black vehicle. Service entrance, east side, basement level, the loading dock. "Where's something you can run in?" She read it 3 times. Then another message came. Lena. "Yeah." "Are you okay?" She stared at the screen for a long time before she answered. "No." "Are you hurt?" "No." "Are you scared?" Yes. Okay. A long pause. The cursor didn't move. Then, I know I don't get to ask you for anything. I know I'm 7 years late, but I need you to do one thing for me until I get there. What? Don't let anyone in that room alone with you. Not your mother, not your father, not anyone in his family, especially not him. If he comes to the door, you say you're getting dressed and you don't answer. Can you do that? Lena's throat closed. Why would he come to the door? He'll know. Or he's about to know. Assume he's about to know. She thought about this. She thought about Damien, asleep or not asleep on the 14th floor. She thought about Rollins, who had been staying in the suite next to his. She thought about Damien's head of security, a man named Pavel, who had cold eyes and a habit of flexing his jaw when he was thinking. How would he know? The response came quickly. Because he pays people in your hotel. He's been paying people in your life for a year. I'll explain when I see you. Just do what I said. Lena lowered the phone into her lap. She looked across the room at Marisol, who was steaming the dress on the padded hanger with a small professional steamer that hissed in long, even pulses. The dress was moving very slightly in the steam, the lace trembling like a living thing, and Lena thought, he paid people in my life for a year. He paid people in this hotel. He was never going to let me leave. Okay, she typed back. Good. 20 minutes. Stay where you are. She slipped the phone under the cushion of the chaise just as the knock came at the door. It was not a stylist's knock. It was not a housekeeping knock. It was 2 slow, sharp raps, and it was followed by a voice Lena had for 12 days been steeling herself to survive. Lena, Damien's voice, warm, easy, unhurried. Sweetheart, open up. Marisol's head came up. The steamer in her hand stilled. Lena stood. She walked, barefoot, across the carpet to the door, and she stopped with her hand on the chain and her forehead an inch from the wood, and she closed her eyes. And she thought, with a clarity that surprised her, I am not going to open this door. Whatever happens in the next 20 minutes, I am not going to open this door. Lena, I'm getting dressed, Damien. I just want to see you for a second. It's bad luck. A small, amused exhale on the other side of the door. Since when are you superstitious, baby? Since today. There was a pause. In the pause, Lena heard the faint creak of his weight shifting on the hallway carpet, and she heard, behind him, the soft shift of another person, a bigger person, and she understood, with a small cold plunge in her stomach, that Damien had not come alone. Lena, softer now, a little closer to the door. Open the door, sweetheart. No. The silence that followed that word was one of the longest silences of her life. Then, still gentle, still almost amused, Damien said, Are you alone in there? Marisol's with me. Put Marisol on. Damien, I'm getting dressed. Put Marisol on. His voice had not gotten louder. It had gotten quieter, and that was worse. And Lena, with the blood roaring in her ears, turned and looked across the room at Marisol. And Marisol, who had not moved from the steamer, gave her a tiny, nearly imperceptible shake of the head. She's in the bathroom, Lena said, with the dress. Another silence. Sweetheart, Damien said, and now there was something new underneath the warmth, something like a blade sliding out of a velvet sleeve. I'm going to need you to open this door in the next 10 seconds. I'll see you at the altar, Damien. Lena, I'll see you at the altar. She stepped back from the door. Her legs were shaking. Her heart was going so hard she could feel it in her teeth. On the other side of the door, Damien Vale stopped talking. There was a very long moment of nothing. Then she heard him say something low to whoever was with him, and she heard footsteps, 2 sets, moving away down the hall. Marisol set the steamer down on the cart very carefully. Miss Carter. Her voice was steady. How long? 18 minutes. Then we have 18 minutes. Come here. I'm going to do your lipstick, and you're going to not shake. And when we go fast. Do you hear me? Yes? Are you listening? Yes. Are you really listening, Miss Carter, or are you about to faint? I'm listening. Lena crossed the room on legs that did not entirely belong to her, and she sat down on the vanity chair, and Marisol tipped her chin up with one small rosewater-scented hand, and Lena closed her eyes. And on the padded hanger in the bathroom, the wedding dress swayed very faintly in the breath of the air conditioning. a silk and lace ghost of the life she was about to walk away from, and outside the window of Suite 1204. The sun had fully broken through the clouds over Crestwood Harbor, and in a black SUV 8 miles up the coast, going too fast on a wet road, a man she had not seen in 7 years was trying not to think about what he would do if he got there 2 minutes too late. The clock on the bedside table read 10:53. She had 1 hour and 7 minutes left of her old life. She did not know yet that the worst of it had not happened. She did not know yet what Damien had already set in motion 2 floors below her. She did not know yet about her father. She breathed in, she breathed out. Marisol's hand was steady on her chin, and somewhere on a road along the coast, a man who had once loved her enough to disappear pressed his foot a little harder to the floor of a car that was not his, and did not take his eyes off the horizon, and did not, for one single second, let himself be afraid. The clock moved the way clocks move in hospitals and airport terminals, in a slow dragging tick that felt personally insulting. 10:54, 10:55. Marisol worked in silence, the small sable brush moving over Lena's cheekbone in steady strokes, and Lena, who had stopped trying to hold herself upright and had just let her spine go slack against the chair, watched her own face come back together in the mirror piece by piece. A little color at the cheek, a little warmth at the mouth, a line of gold at the corner of each eye. The mask of a bride, rebuilt on a face that had already decided it was not a bride anymore. "Tell me something," Lena said. Anything. I need to hear a voice that isn't in my head." Marisol paused, considered, and went back to work. "My mother had a saying," she said. "She used to say, 'Mija, the devil is patient, but he is not careful.' I didn't know what she meant until I was 40. I thought she was talking about, religion, church things. She wasn't. She was talking about bad men. Bad men wait and wait and wait," she said, "but then they get sloppy at the end. They cannot help it. They get too sure of themselves. That is when you go." "Do you think he's sloppy?" "I think he is very sure of himself." Marisol set down the brush and picked up a small bullet of lipstick, twisted the base, inspected the color in the light. "And I think any man who knocks on a bride's door the morning of her wedding with another man in the hallway is a man who has stopped being careful. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this room." "You let me worry about that part." Marisol, "Close your mouth, like this." She pressed her own lips together, a soft, even shape, and Lena did the same, and Marisol, with the precision of a woman who had painted 400 brides, drew the color along Lena's bottom lip in one clean pull. At 10:58, the hotel phone rang. Both of them looked at it. "Don't," Marisol said. Lena did not move. The phone rang 4 times, 6 times, 9 times, and then it went quiet. And then 30 seconds later, it rang again. "They'll send someone up." "Let them." "They'll send security." "Their security or his security?" Lena stared at her. "Miss Carter." Marisol capped the lipstick. Her face had gone very calm, the kind of calm that is not the absence of fear but its far side, the flat plain on the other side of the mountain. "This hotel has doormen. This hotel has valets. This hotel has a lovely concierge named David who went to high school with my oldest nephew. What this hotel does not have is an army. And what that man in the hall has, in my experience of men like him, is an army. So when the phone rings, we don't answer it, because we do not know whose phone it is anymore. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Good. Stand up. We need to get you dressed." "I'm not wearing that dress." Marisol looked at the dress hanging in the bathroom doorway, and then back at Lena, and she said calmly, "No, honey, of course you're not. But anyone watching the door has to think you are. Here." She crossed to the rolling cart and unzipped a black garment bag that had been hanging from the side, and out of the garment bag she pulled a pair of dark, slim pants, a soft oatmeal-colored sweater, a lightweight rain shell, and a pair of low gray sneakers still in their tissue paper. The tags were still on. The sneakers were Lena's size. Lena stared. "You planned this. I brought options. I always bring options. 2 years ago, a bride in Marin County asked me for a cigarette at the altar, smoked it in the vestibule, and told her groom she'd changed her mind. I walked her out the back with her veil still on. Since then, in every bag, I bring something a woman can leave in." Marisol held the sweater out. Arms up. Lena lifted her arms and Marisol pulled the sweater down over her head like she was dressing a child. And Lena stepped into the pants and Marisol knelt and slid the sneakers onto her feet and tied the laces, double knotting them. And Lena, looking down at the top of Marisol's dark head, felt a ragged, unexpected wave of gratitude crest in her chest, so hard she could not breathe for a second. "Why are you helping me?" Marisol stood. She did not answer right away. She smoothed the shoulders of Lena's sweater and she brushed a piece of hair back from Lena's forehead, and then she said quietly, "Because 22 years ago, a woman I knew went down an aisle I could have pulled her off of, and she was dead by Christmas. And I told myself the next one I see, I pull." Lena's eyes filled. "Don't cry. I will slap you. I swear to—" "I'm not crying. You're about to cry. Hold it. Hold it, good girl." Marisol walked to the window and pulled the sheer back an inch and looked down at the driveway. "Your car is coming?" "Yes." "He said the loading dock?" "Yes." "Good. That means he knows the building. That is a very good sign. Where is your phone?" "Under the cushion." "The real one?" "On the vanity." "Leave it." Leave it on the vanity, plugged in, screen up. Anyone who comes into this room in the next hour needs to believe you are still somewhere in this building. Your phone stays here. You take the other one." Lena walked back to the vanity. She picked up her real phone, the slim gold thing Damien had bought her for her birthday, and she looked at it the way a person looks at a shed skin. 23 notifications, text from her mother, a text from Peter that said nervous. And then, below it, "You've got this, sis." A missed call from her father. Her father. Her father, who did not know. Her father who would be standing in the lobby in a navy suit in 15 minutes, waiting to walk her down a carpet of white roses. She set the phone down, face up, still plugged in. She felt like she was unhooking something from a life support machine. The burner phone buzzed against her hip. 10 minutes. "Can you move?" "Yes." "Is anyone in the hall with you? I think they left. They tried the door 10 minutes ago. Are you dressed?" "Yes." "Not the wedding dress." A flicker of something that was almost a laugh. "No." "Good. There's a service corridor behind your suite. Marisol knows it. Go now. Don't wait for my signal. Every minute you stay in that room is a minute he knows where you are." Lena looked up. "Marisol, I heard him. He's right." Marisol was already zipping the garment bag closed, not stuffing, but arranging it carefully, like a thing she needed to leave innocent. The staff corridor door is in the alcove by the ice machine. It's unmarked. Gray door, push bar. Down 2 flights, and you come out in the back hallway of the banquet kitchen. The loading dock is through the walk-in refrigerator. It's how the fish comes in. Nobody uses it after 10. The cooks are all on the floor by now, prepping for the reception. She turned. "I will walk out behind you. I will walk back up the main hall carrying your garment bag, like I am bringing the veil down for pressing. If anyone stops me, I tell them you're napping. I tell them you asked not to be disturbed until your mother comes at 11:30. That gives you 37 minutes. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Say it back to me. 37 minutes, stairs, 2 flights, kitchen, walk-in, loading dock. Black vehicle at the loading dock. Not a black SUV in the driveway. Not a black car in the valet. The loading dock. Don't get turned around." "I won't." If a man in a gray suit with very short hair is in the kitchen, you turn around. If anybody says your name, you run. If anybody grabs your arm, you scream. Scream, Miss Carter. You don't go quiet. You don't be polite. You make the ugliest sound you have ever made in your life. Are we clear?" "Yes." "Good." Marisol put both hands on Lena's shoulders. Her hands were shaking, very slightly, for the first time. "Now, listen to me one more thing. Listen to me. If you make it to that car, you do not look back. Not at this hotel. Not at this town. Not at anyone in it. Not for a long time. Do you hear me?" "What about my dad?" Marisol's face did a small, complicated thing. "Your dad will be there when you come back, honey. If he's the kind of dad worth coming back to, he'll be there. But he is not going to be there if you don't go." Lena nodded. She did not trust her voice. Marisol crossed herself once, quick, a superstition more than a prayer. And then she said, "Go." Botum. The suite door opened onto an empty hallway. Lena had not been expecting that. She had been expecting, in some animal part of her brain, a man in a suit, a set of hands, the end of her life. Instead, there was the pale cream carpet, the faint bergamot smell of the hotel's signature candle, and at the far end of the hall, a housekeeping cart parked against the wall with nobody attending it. A half-eaten croissant on a room service tray outside a door 3 rooms down. The distant hum of a vacuum, 2 floors below, muffled. Marisol stepped out behind her, wheeled cart in hand, and tipped her head once toward the alcove by the ice machine. Lena walked. She did not run. Running, in a carpeted hallway of a 5-star hotel, made more noise than walking. She kept her hand in her pocket, wrapped around the burner phone, and she walked past the cream-colored doors with their discreet brass numbers, and she passed the suite where the bridal party was supposed to be, where her cousin Aria and her best friend Holly and 2 other bridesmaids were probably at this moment in matching silk robes, drinking Prosecco and taking photographs. And she did not slow down, and she did not look. And she passed 1,206 and 1,208 and 1,210. And she reached the alcove by the ice machine, and she pushed through the unmarked gray door. And she did not look back at Marisol. And Marisol did not look at her either, and they parted like 2 strangers in an airport, which in a certain sense they were. The stairwell was concrete and cold. Her sneakers made a dull rubbery sound on the steps. She took the stairs 2 at a time, one hand on the metal rail, and at the landing between the 11th and 10th floors, she had to stop and put her forehead against the cinder block because the adrenaline had finally caught up to her body and her vision had gone briefly spangled at the edges. She breathed. She breathed. She counted to 4 on the inhale and to 6 on the exhale, a thing a therapist had taught her years ago, a thing that actually worked. She pushed off the wall. She kept going down. At the bottom of the 2nd flight, the door was propped open with a small wooden wedge, and Lena pushed through it into a long tiled corridor that smelled of bleach and warm bread and something faintly fishy. And for a moment, the ordinary commercial aliveness of the place was so jarring after the hush of the suite floor that she almost turned around. 2 line cooks in white coats were leaning on a stainless steel counter 20 feet down the hall, smoking out a service door propped open with a cinder block. One of them glanced at her and glanced away. A woman in a hairnet pushed a rack of sheet pans past her without looking up. A radio was playing somewhere, low, a classic rock station, a Tom Petty song she could not quite place. Lena walked. She walked like a person who belonged there, like a wedding planner or an event coordinator, and she kept her eyes forward and her shoulders down, and she passed the prep station and the pastry counter and the glass-fronted cabinet of stacked white plates, and she came to a heavy silver door with a temperature gauge next to it and a handle that looked like it belonged on a submarine, and she stopped. Her hand was shaking. The burner buzzed in her pocket. "Are you in the kitchen?" "Yes." "Do you see the walk-in?" "Yes." "Go through it, straight through. There's a 2nd door on the back wall. Push, don't stop. I'm 30 seconds out." She put her hand on the handle. She pulled. A gust of white cold air hit her in the face, and she stepped into the walk-in refrigerator, and the door shut behind her with a soft, heavy clunk. And for one long, frozen moment, Lena Carter stood alone in a stainless steel room lined with metal shelves of vacuum-sealed fish, and crates of lemons, and a hanging row of butchered chickens, and the air was so cold it made her eyes water, and she thought, with a kind of wild, disbelieving clarity, "This is the worst wedding morning in the history of weddings, and I am going to remember this room for the rest of my life." She crossed the refrigerator in 4 long strides. The 2nd door at the back was smaller and plainer, and she pushed it open and stepped out into a narrow concrete corridor lit by a single fluorescent tube. And the corridor sloped down, and at the bottom of the slope was another door, and she could see, under the bottom of that door, a thin line of daylight. She ran. She hit the door at a full jog, and it gave, and she stumbled out into gray morning light and a cold, wet wind coming off the water and the bang and rattle of a delivery truck being unloaded 40 feet to her left. And she froze. There were men at the truck. 2 of them, in work clothes, rolling a hand dolly stacked with cases of wine into the service bay. Neither of them was looking at her. Beyond the truck, the loading dock opened onto a narrow service road that wound around the back of the hotel and disappeared behind a row of hedges. The service road was empty, no black car. Her heart was a fist in her throat. She stepped back into the shadow of the doorway. She pulled the burner phone out. "Where?" she typed, and her thumbs were slippery and she had to do it twice. "Are you?" No answer. She counted to 10. No answer. At 15 seconds, she looked up, and she saw, at the far end of the service road where it curved behind the hedges, a dark vehicle slowly nosing around the corner. Not an SUV, something lower. A long black sedan, the kind with tinted windows and a quiet engine, and her stomach dropped because she did not know if it was him, and she did not know if it was them, and she had exactly 2 seconds to decide whether to run or hide. And her legs, for the third time that morning, stopped working. The sedan rolled toward her. It slowed. It stopped, 30 feet from the loading dock, at an angle that blocked the view from the service bay. The passenger window rolled down, and a man she had not seen in 7 years leaned across the seat and said, "Lena, get in." She didn't move. She couldn't. He was wearing a charcoal jacket over a gray shirt, open at the collar. His hair was shorter than she remembered. His jaw was harder. There was a small pale scar at his temple that had not been there at 18. His eyes were the same. His eyes were exactly the same. "Lena." Lower. Urgent. Right now. She crossed the concrete in a stumble that was not quite a run. He pushed the door open from the inside. She fell into the passenger seat, and he was already pulling away from the curb before she had closed the door. And he reached across her without looking and grabbed the seatbelt and pulled it across her body and clipped it in. And only then did he glance at her, and only for a half second. And then he was watching the rear view. Head down. What? Head down, Lena. She bent forward. He took the next turn fast but smooth, and the sedan came up out of the service road and onto a side street. And he drove 2 blocks at exactly the speed limit, and he made a left and then a right and then another left, and then he pulled into the underground garage of a boutique hotel 4 streets over and drove down to the 3rd level and parked between a concrete pillar and a black van with painter's plates. And he cut the engine. Silence. Her breath was coming too fast. She was aware of him beside her the way a person in a room with a gas leak is aware of the room. Her whole body turned toward him, her whole body refusing to. He was not looking at her. He was looking in the rearview mirror, and then at the side mirror, and then at a small tablet mounted to the dashboard that she had not noticed before, which was showing 4 camera feeds she could not make sense of. Ryder. 1 second. Ryder. Lena, 1 second, please. He tapped something on the tablet. One of the feeds zoomed in. The screen showed the driveway of the Ashford Grand. Guests were arriving. A valet was taking keys. A woman in a pink dress was crying into her friend's shoulder. There were 2 men in dark suits standing near the revolving door who were not guests and who were scanning faces. "They don't know yet," he said, mostly to himself. "Good." "Ryder." He turned his head, finally, and he looked at her. For a long second, neither of them spoke. Then quietly, carefully, like he was afraid of breaking something, he said, "Hi." Her throat closed. "Hi," she whispered back. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Yes." He exhaled. Something in his shoulders came down half an inch. He scrubbed a hand over his face and then dropped it, and he looked at her, really looked at her, and she could see him taking in the oatmeal sweater and the sneakers and the mascara that had been redone and the small tremor in her hands, and his jaw tightened. "Okay," he said. "Okay. We have maybe 8 minutes before somebody in that hotel figures out you are not in that suite. We have maybe 12 before anyone tracks this car. We need to be out of this garage in 3, and out of this city in 15. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "Not really." "That's fine. That's okay." He reached behind his seat and came up with a small black duffel. He set it in her lap. "Open it." She opened it. Inside, neatly organized, was a zippered pouch with a passport and a name that was not hers, a prepaid credit card, a thin sheaf of cash in rubber-banded hundreds, a charger, and a baseball cap. "Whose passport is this?" "Yours? It's real. It'll work." "Ryder, how do you have a passport for me under a different name?" "I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything. Not in this car, not in this garage, not in the next 3 hours. I need you to get us out of the state first, and then I will sit down and I will tell you every single thing you want to know. Deal?" She opened her mouth. "Deal, Lena?" "Deal." "Put the cap on, hair up under it. There should be a scrunchie in the side pocket." She fumbled in the duffel and came up with a small black elastic, and she twisted her hair up and shoved it under the cap, and her hands were shaking so badly she dropped the scrunchie twice, and the second time he reached over without a word and took the elastic out of her fingers and caught the end of her hair and wound it up and tucked it under the cap himself, efficient and impersonal, not looking at her face, and his fingers were warm, and she closed her eyes for 1 second, just 1 second, and then she opened them again. Ryder. Yeah. My dad. He did not answer right away. He put the sedan into gear. Ryder. I know, Lena. What does that mean, you know? It means I have a man at the hotel who is going to find your father as soon as it becomes clear you are gone. Your father is going to be the first person in that building to know you left on purpose. He will be told that you are safe, and he will be given a number to call, and that number will be mine. Nobody else will be told anything. Not your mother, not your brother, not him, not his people. A man at the hotel? Yes. Who? I'll tell you in the next 3 hours. Ryder Hayes, I swear to... Lena. He had put the car in drive, but he had not taken his foot off the brake. He looked at her, and his face did something she did not remember from when they were 18. It went soft. Just for a second. A seventh of a second break in whatever professional thing he was running on. And in that split second, she saw the boy who had sat in a pumpkin-colored truck and asked her what she actually wanted, and the boy was tired, and the boy was terrified. And the boy had been terrified for 7 years. I will answer every question you have. I owe you that, and a lot more. But if we are still in this garage in 90 seconds, the answering becomes a lot harder. So can I please drive first? Well, boss. Yes. Thank you. He pulled out. He took the back streets. He did not use GPS. He seemed to know, by some internal map, every alley and one-way and service road in Crestwood Harbor, and he worked them like a chess problem, a right and a left and a long straight run through a neighborhood of squat brick duplexes with American flags in the windows. And then a left onto a commercial strip Lena had driven past maybe 4 times in her entire life. And then a swing around the back of a grocery store where an employee door was propped open and a second vehicle was waiting, a dark gray crossover with a child seat in the back, and a small bumper sticker that read, "My kid made honor roll at Cormick Lake Elementary." And he parked the sedan, and he pocketed the keys, and he said, "Out. We're switching cars. We're switching cars." In a parking lot. In a parking lot. Because the sedan is clean, but it is only clean for about another 20 minutes, and I would rather be in something that looks like a soccer mom's car when they start looking. She got out. He locked the sedan with a small fob, and he walked around to the crossover and opened the passenger door for her, and she climbed in. And the crossover smelled like goldfish crackers and sunscreen, and she sat there in a mother's car in a grocery store parking lot in a wedding hairstyle she had half dismantled, and her stomach folded in on itself, and she pressed her hands into her thighs, and for one long moment, she just could not make her body do anything. He got in the driver's seat. He did not start the car right away. Hey. Yeah. You're all right. I'm really not. I know. He turned the ignition. You don't have to be. Just stay with me. Just for the next hour. You can fall apart in the next hour. I'll be right here. We just can't fall apart yet. Okay. Okay. He pulled out. He turned north toward the expressway. For a long time, neither of them spoke. She watched the town go past her window in a way she had never watched it before, as a thing she was leaving instead of a thing she lived in. The Harbor Bank building, white stone, where her father had a corner office on the 14th floor. The community theater where she had played Juliet at 16, which had never stopped making her faintly embarrassed. The coffee shop on the corner of Maple and 2nd, where she and Damien had stopped for lattes every Saturday morning for 14 months. She watched each one go, and she did not feel the things she had expected to feel. She did not feel grief. She did not feel doubt. She felt the way a person feels when they realize they have been holding their breath for years and have just finally exhaled. Ryder. Yeah. Was he going to kill me? He did not answer for a long moment. He was watching the on-ramp to the expressway, and he was watching the mirror, and he was choosing his words. Not today, he said at last. Today he was going to marry you. And then, in my best estimate, you are going to have an accident sometime in the next 8 to 11 months. Probably in a car, probably while he was out of the country on business, probably with a witness he'd already chosen. She made a small sound. Breathe, Lena. I am. Slower. She breathed. Why? She said. How do you know that, Ryder? How do you? Because the woman before you had the same profile. 29, prominent family, only daughter, inheritance vehicle. She died 14 months after the engagement in Colorado in a rental car on a mountain road. The driver was a ski instructor named Kurt. Kurt is currently living under a different name in a town in Paraguay on a retainer from one of your fiancé's offshore accounts. How do you know this? I have known this for a year and a half. Ryder, how do you? I know, Lena, because finding out was my job. She turned her whole body toward him. What do you mean, your job? He did not look at her. He merged onto the expressway, and he put the crossover in the middle lane, and he set the cruise control exactly 3 miles over the speed limit, and he said, very quietly, "When I left 7 years ago, I left because 2 men I did not know came to see me at my uncle's garage and told me, very politely, that if I continued seeing you, things would happen to people in my family. They were specific. They named my cousin. They named my aunt. They named the diner Hal worked at. I was 18. I was 18 years old and I was a mechanic's apprentice, and I had a high school diploma and a truck that barely ran, and I believed them because the kind of men who deliver that message are not the kind of men who are bluffing." Who? Men who worked for your fiancé's father. The world went very quiet. Ryder, you heard me right. Damien's father. Damien's father had a business problem. Damien's father had, at that time, a 19-year-old son who he wanted to marry, eventually, into your family. Your family owned the last mile of waterfront the Port Authority needed for the expansion of the commercial shipping terminal, which his father's shell companies were quietly positioning to acquire. A Carter daughter marrying a Vale son solved a decade of bureaucratic problems in one afternoon. It was a plan with a 10-year horizon. Your fiancé was a piece in it before he was old enough to drink. You were a piece in it before you graduated high school. I was an obstacle, and I was a very small one, and they handled me the way you handle a small obstacle. They scared me. They scared me enough to make me run. Well, you ran, she said. It came out flat. I ran. For 7 years. For about 3. For the first 3, I was in the wind. I was in Texas, and then I was in Montana, and then I was in Alaska for a year working on a fishing boat. And I was in a bad place, Lena. I don't need to pretend I wasn't. I was drinking, and I was sleeping in a bunk that smelled like diesel, and I was 22 years old, and I thought I had ruined both of our lives for nothing. Then in the 4th year, I met a man. And that man did not work for your fiancé's family. That man worked for people who were, let's say, interested in your fiancé's family. And the man and I had a very long conversation on a dock in Juneau. And at the end of the conversation, I had a job. What job? A job finding out what Damien Vale was, and what Damien Vale's father was, and what was going to happen to you. Because I had already figured out by then what was going to happen to you. Because the minute they threatened my cousin to get me out of your life, I understood they weren't clearing the way for nothing. They were clearing the way for something. It took me another 3 years to understand what. By then you were engaged. You've been, yes, for a long time, Lena. Watching me. Keeping you alive. That is the same thing. I know it is. She turned her face to the window. Her eyes were hot. She pressed her palm flat against the cold glass, and she watched the reflection of her own face slide over the guardrails at 70 miles an hour, and she felt something in her chest that was not rage and not gratitude and not love, but some wild, scrambled thing that had all 3 of those inside it and could not yet tell them apart. Lena. She did not answer. Lena, I know how this sounds. I know what I am after today. I am not asking you to forgive me. I am not asking you for anything. When we are safe, you can get out of this car, and you can walk into the rest of your life and never see me again. And I have made my peace with that. I promise you I have. I just needed to get you out of that hotel alive first. That's all. That is the only thing I have been trying to do. Stop talking. Okay? Just, please, for 5 minutes, stop talking. Okay? She leaned her forehead against the window. The glass was cool. The expressway hummed. Somewhere behind them, 8 miles back, 300 guests were settling into white chairs under a canopy of ivory flowers, and a string quartet was tuning. and a man in a custom-tailored morning coat was checking his cufflinks in a mirror and wondering, perhaps beginning to wonder, why no one had sent word yet from the bridal suite. Lena closed her eyes. In the dark behind her eyelids, she saw, for just a flash, Marisol's small, capable hands on her shoulders, and she saw the neon buzz of a gas station sign off Route 9. And she saw, in the cab of a pumpkin-colored truck, a boy who had asked her, once, what she actually wanted, if no one was watching, if no one was making the list, and she had not had an answer. She had one now. Ryder. Yeah. Keep driving. Okay. And when we stop, you're going to tell me every single thing, every name, every date, every dollar, every time you stood in a parking lot across the street from my apartment and did not let me see you. I want all of it, Ryder. I want the whole 7 years. I don't want the clean version. You'll get it, I promise. No more promises. He nodded, once, slowly. The tendon in his jaw jumped. No more promises, he said. The crossover climbed the long, slow grade out of Crestwood Harbor, past the sign that read, "You are now leaving," and then, a mile later, past the one that read, "Thank you for visiting," and Lena Carter, in a borrowed sweater and a stranger's car, with a false passport in her lap, and a man she had once loved in the driver's seat beside her, watched the last rooftops of the only town she had ever called home drop away below the ridgeline, and she did not look back, not once, not even a little, not even when the spire of the courthouse flared gold in a break of late morning sun over her left shoulder. And she understood, in a bone-deep way she would spend the rest of her life trying to put words to, that the girl who had sent a message from a bridal suite at 10:15 that morning was already somebody she used to be. The dashboard clock said 11:23. The wedding, somewhere behind them, was starting without her. By 11:31, they were on a stretch of two-lane that ran parallel to the expressway, a back road Ryder had taken without telling her, and the traffic had thinned to the occasional pickup and a tractor crawling the shoulder. Lena had not spoken in 8 minutes. She was watching the trees go by, the maples already halfway into their reds and oranges, and she was trying to understand the simple physical fact of being in a moving car with Ryder Hayes when, according to the schedule pinned to a clipboard in her mother's hand, she was supposed to be taking her father's arm at the top of a white carpet in a candlelit ballroom. "Where are we going?" she said finally. "A house." "Whose house?" "Nobody's anymore." "Ryder." "It's a place I set up about a year ago. It's in a county that does not talk to your county. We'll be there in about 40 minutes. You'll have a bed, you'll have a shower, there's food, there's a landline. I thought you should have a landline in case you wanted to call somebody, and in case whatever you called from couldn't be traced." "You thought of that a year ago?" "Yes. You bought a house." "I rented it. Year lease. Cash. The owner is a widow in Florida who does not know who I am and who does not care." She looked at him, the side of his face, the knuckles of his right hand on the steering wheel, which were scarred in a way they had not been at 18, a thin white line across the second joint of his index finger, a small dark mark at the base of his thumb. She had spent 7 years choosing not to wonder about his hands. "You've been ready for this," she said. "I've been ready for some version of this. This exact version." "No." He glanced at her. "I never thought you'd send the message, Lena. I didn't. I wanted you to. I have wanted you to every single day for a long time. But I made peace a while back with the idea that you wouldn't. Then what were you ready for?" "I was ready," he said. And then he stopped, and he chose his words. "I was ready to get you out whether you asked or not." The silence that came after that was a different kind of silence. "You were going to take me out. I was going to make sure you didn't die, any way I could, without my consent. If it came to that." "Ryder, I'm not going to lie to you, Lena. You said you wanted the whole 7 years. You get the whole 7 years. I had a version of this morning where you walked down the aisle and I walked in from the back of the room and told everyone in that hall exactly what your fiancé was, with documents, in front of his mother and your mother and every reporter I could get in the door. And I had another version where you didn't make it to the altar because he'd already done something to you, and in that version I was going to do something I cannot take back. And I am grateful, Lena, I am so grateful that I don't have to find out which man I would have been at the end of that day." She did not answer. Her hands were in her lap. The false passport was still there, slipped half into the open pocket of the duffel. She picked it up. She opened it. The photograph inside was her own, but the haircut was from 2 years ago, a bob she had worn for one summer. Her name, printed in blocky machine letters, read, Lena Michelle Donovan. Donovan was your grandmother. Yes. How did you... I went through your mother's garbage once. Ryder, I'm telling you the truth. You asked for the truth. Your mother's estate lawyer threw away a stack of genealogy papers 2 years ago when they were cleaning out the storage in the boathouse. I took them out of the bag before the truck came. It's how I knew Donovan was a name that belonged to you that nobody in your fiancé's family had on any list anywhere. You went through my mother's garbage. Yes. That is... She laughed. It came out broken. That is completely insane. I'm aware. You understand that what you're describing is... I understand what I'm describing. I am not asking you to think it was reasonable. I am telling you what I did. She looked out the window. A horse pasture rolled by, and a red barn, and a mailbox with a child's handprints painted in green across the side. The ordinariness of it was obscene. Ryder? Yeah. I need you to pull over. Are you going to be sick? I don't know. He pulled onto a wide dirt shoulder in front of an abandoned farm stand with a faded sign that read, Sweet corn, 50 cents. She got out before the car was fully stopped. She walked around the back of the crossover. She put her hand on the hatchback. She leaned forward, and she was not sick in the end, but she breathed in and out for a long minute in the cold October air, and she watched her breath fog and disappear, and she thought, I have not had a thought in 7 years that was entirely mine. I thought I did. I didn't. Someone was adjusting the frame the whole time. She heard his door open. She did not turn around. Don't come here, she said. Okay? She heard him stop. She imagined him standing beside the open driver's door, 1 foot in the gravel, 1 foot still in the car, waiting. When I broke up with the man I dated for 2 years in my 20s, she said, still facing the dead cornfield, I cried for about a week, and my mother told me that meant he had mattered. And I remember specifically thinking, that night in my apartment, that I was never going to feel a tenth of what I had felt at 17 ever again. And I thought that meant I was broken. And I thought that meant I had let something be too big when I was a girl. And it had wrecked my ability to feel anything normal-sized afterward. And for 7 years, Ryder, for 7 years, I have been trying to train myself out of caring that I did not care about anybody. And you are telling me that the whole time, Lena, you are telling me that the whole time you were, what, standing in the parking lot? Yes. You let me date those men. I let you have a life. I didn't have a life. I had a waiting room. He did not answer. Ryder, I want you to understand what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that I have been in a waiting room for 7 years. I have been in a waiting room that I did not even know was a waiting room. I had a job. I had friends. I had a very expensive sofa. Her voice cracked. She shut her mouth. She pressed her palm flat against the cold metal of the tailgate. I had a whole life that I was not in. I know. You don't know. I know, Lena. You don't know, Ryder, because you got to be the one who was doing something. You got to be the one with a project. I was the project. I did not consent to being the project. Behind her, gravel shifted. She felt him take 1 step and then stop. You're right, he said. About all of it. You're right. She pressed her forehead to the tailgate. The metal was cold enough to hurt. She let it hurt. Lena. What? I'm going to say one thing, and then I will not say anything again until you want me to. Is that okay? Say it. I did not know how else to keep you alive. She closed her eyes. I'm not telling you that to make it sound noble. I'm telling you that because it is the truest sentence I have in me. I was 18. I was terrified. I believed, and I still believe, that if I had come back for you any sooner, they would have killed you before they killed me, because they had more reason to. I watched. I learned. I worked. I got better at it. And the whole time I was getting better at it, you were getting married to the son of the man who took you from me. And I could not tell you without tipping him, and if I tipped him, he would move faster. So I waited. I waited too long. I know I waited too long. I am going to live with that. And if you decide when we get to this house that you never want to see me again, I will drive you wherever you want to go, and I will hand you every piece of evidence I have on him, and I will walk out of your life, and I will not come back. You have my word, for whatever that is worth after all this." She did not turn around. She stood with her forehead against the tailgate for a long time. Then she said, "I don't know what I want yet." "That's fair." "I'm not going to know for a while." "That's fair. Can you live with that?" "Yes." "Okay." She straightened. She wiped her face with her sleeve. She walked around to the passenger side without looking at him, and she opened the door and she got in. He got in too. He did not start the car right away. "Ryder." "Yeah." "My dad." "Yeah." "Can you call him?" "From the house. The line there is clean." "Now." He looked at her. He didn't argue. He reached into his jacket and took out a phone. Not the burner she had been using, a different one, a flip phone she hadn't known he had. And he dialed a number from memory. He held it to his ear. She watched his face. "It's me," he said, when someone on the other end answered. "I have her. She's safe." Yeah, tell him only. Not his wife, not the son. Tell him she left on purpose. Tell him she's unhurt. Tell him she will call him in a few hours from a number he should not save. "Yes. I know. That is not my problem right now. Tell him." He hung up. "Who was that?" Lena said. "My man in the hotel." "The one you said you had?" "Yes." "Who is he?" Ryder put the phone back in his jacket. "Hal," he said. She stared at him. "Hal?" "Yes." "Our Hal. Diner Hal." "Yes." Hal is 68 years old. Hal is 68 years old, and he is sitting in a Ford pickup in the front parking lot of the Ashford Grand drinking a large coffee. He came in on my ticket last night. He is very good, Lena. He has been very good for a long time. He was in the Marines before he bought the diner. I did not know that when we were kids either. "Hal?" "Yes." She put her hands over her face. A sound came out of her that started as a laugh and ended as something else. She held it. She held it together. She took her hands away. "Okay." "Okay?" "Keep driving." He put the car in drive. They did not speak for 20 minutes. The house was at the end of a dirt road that branched off a county highway and ran back through a stand of pines. It was small. A farmhouse, or what had been a farmhouse once, 100 years ago, a story and a half with a covered porch and a tin roof that had been patched in 2 places with bright new metal that had not yet weathered down to match. The paint on the clapboards was the color of old butter. There was a chimney on the east side and a propane tank on the west side, and a detached shed out back that looked, to Lena's surprise, clean. No yard to speak of. A gravel drive that curved to end behind the shed, invisible from the road. Ryder cut the engine. For a moment, they just sat there. Lena looked at the house. She tried to picture herself walking into it. She could not yet quite manage it. "It's stocked," he said. "Food in the pantry, food in the fridge, hot water. There's a wood stove, but you won't need it today. The cell signal is bad on purpose. There's a landline in the kitchen. The closest neighbor is a mile and a half east through the woods, and she is 91 and does not leave her house. Does she know about you? She knows a man rents the place sometimes for fishing. She has not seen me. She has seen my truck twice." "Your truck?" "I have a truck. It's in the shed." "Is it the same truck?" The question came out before she could stop it. Small, embarrassing. He looked at her across the console, and his face did the soft thing again, and she hated that she had asked. "No," he said quietly. "That truck is gone. That one I sold in Texas in 2019. I don't know where it is." "Okay? I'm sorry." "Why are you sorry?" "Because you asked." She opened her door. She got out. Her legs felt strange, loose in the knees, adrenaline drunk. She walked up the 3 wooden steps to the porch, and she stood there. And she waited. And he came up behind her with the duffel, and he unlocked the front door, and he pushed it open, and he stepped back to let her go in first. Inside it smelled like cedar and coffee. Someone had lit a small candle in the kitchen recently and blown it out. There was a kettle on the stove. The floors were old pine, wide planked, worn down to the color of honey in the middle. A small living room to the left, with a sofa, an armchair, a braided rug, a wood stove, cold. A bookshelf with a row of paperbacks that he had almost certainly not bought. A kitchen ahead with a red laminate table and 4 chairs that did not match. Up a short staircase to the right, a single bedroom under the roof, door open, a patchwork quilt across the foot of a made bed. A bathroom off the kitchen. That was the house. "It's small," he said, behind her. "It's fine. The bedroom is yours. I'll sleep on the couch. Okay? You should eat something." "I can't." "I know. You should anyway." He moved around her into the kitchen. He filled the kettle. He opened the fridge and took out eggs and a stick of butter, and he took a cast iron pan off the hook by the stove and set it on the burner, and he did all of it with the quiet, automatic economy of a man who had lived by himself for a long time. She watched him from the doorway. She watched him crack 3 eggs into a bowl. She watched him salt the butter as it melted. She watched the muscles of his back under the gray shirt, and she thought, "I know that back." And then she thought, "No, you don't. You knew the back of an 18-year-old. This is a different back." "Ryder." "Yeah. I need to sit down." Sit. There." He nodded at the table without turning around. "Water's almost ready. You take it black still?" "Yes." "Okay." She sat. She put her hands on the table. She looked at her own hands and she thought, these are not the hands that were going to exchange rings in 20 minutes. "Ryder." "Yeah." "How much money does he have?" "Damien?" "Yes." Ryder scraped eggs around the pan. "Liquid, about 60 million, in accounts across 4 jurisdictions. On paper, closer to 200. Most of that is tied up in real estate and in his father's company, which is complicated. He is not the richest man in your county. He is the meanest one. And he has people." "He has people." "How many?" "In a serious problem sense, maybe 8 to 12. Pavel runs them. Rollins pays them. There is a lawyer named Greaves who does the paper. There are 2 off-book contractors out of a firm in Maryland he uses when he wants something to happen out of state. It is not an army. It is a crew. It is the same crew his father used for 25 years. Some of them are starting to be tired. Some of them are not. And what do you have?" "I have me." She looked up. "That's it?" "No." He slid the eggs onto a plate. He cut a piece of bread off a round loaf on the counter and toasted it in the pan with the remaining butter, and he set the plate in front of her. He set a mug of black coffee next to it. He sat down across from her. He laced his fingers together on the table. "I have 2 other men. I have Hal. I have a woman named Teresa who does the paperwork. I have a computer guy in Chicago whose name I will not tell you because you do not want to know. And I have a folder on Damien Vale that weighs 11 pounds. Weighs. Yeah. 11 pounds. Paper, photocopies, bank records, wire confirmations, transcripts of 2 voicemails, 1 sworn statement from a woman in Lisbon whose name you might recognize, and a ledger that a forensic accountant, a living one, has already authenticated. Lisbon. Valentina. He looked at her. You knew about Valentina. I knew she existed. I knew she quit. I knew nobody in his office would say, why? I knew she had been his assistant for 3 years, and then one day there was a different woman at her desk, and nobody talked about it. Valentina is alive, Lena. Okay? She is alive, and she is safe, and she is a witness. We got her out 2 years ago. We. The people I work with. Who? Ryder. He did not answer right away. He watched her eat, or not eat, watched her push the eggs around with the side of the fork. There is a small firm, he said at last, that is interested in men like Damien's father. The firm is privately held. It does work that ends up, eventually, in federal cases, but the firm itself does not have a badge. It is, I suppose, something between an investigation shop and a witness protection operation. It is run by a man who used to work for the government and got tired of watching cases fall apart because the people in them got killed. He runs it out of 2 offices, one in a city you would recognize and one in a town you would not. I met him, as I told you, on a dock in Juneau. He gave me a job because I had a reason to finish this one. You work for a private firm. Yes. That is putting Damien's father in prison. That is trying to put Damien's father in prison. And when we are done with the father, the son. And there is a line of people behind them. I am not the biggest thing at my firm. Damien's family is not the biggest thing at my firm. I have had, for 3 years, a narrow and specific job, which was to keep you alive until we had enough to move without you being the cost of moving. She set the fork down. You waited. I waited. Until you had enough. Yes. You waited while he put a ring on my finger. Yes. You waited while he started threatening my father. I started moving, he said, the morning he made the first threat. That was 11 days ago. That is when I called Hal. That is when I moved the folder out of a safe in Chicago and into a safe in a town 3 hours from here. That is when I started setting up this house. That is when I knew we had 1 more week, and then whatever was going to happen was going to happen. I was going to pull you out today, Lena, whether you sent the message or not. The message just meant I did not have to break the door. She stared at her plate. Eat something. I can't. Lena. I can't, Ryder. He leaned back. He rubbed the side of his jaw. He was tired. She could see now, in the kitchen light, that he was exhausted. There were hollows under his eyes that makeup would not have fixed, if men her age wore makeup. There was a small tremor in his hand that he had been, she realized, hiding. Okay, he said. Drink the coffee at least. I need you to have something in you before you call your father. All right. She drank the coffee. It was better than the coffee she had been drinking every morning for 18 months. Too hot. She drank it anyway. Ryder. Yeah. My father isn't going to understand. No. He's going to think I had a nervous breakdown. At first, yes. He is going to tell my mother, and my mother is going to call Damien, because that is what my mother does, and Damien will know where to start looking. And your father is not going to tell your mother. You don't know my father. I know enough about your father. I know his golf handicap. I know his blood pressure medication. I know that he made a phone call 9 months ago to a private banker in Zurich asking about a line of credit he did not get, and I know why he asked. I know that your father is in the same trouble you are in, Lena. Different kind, same trouble. Damien has been leaning on him for a year. She looked up. What? Your father is the last person Damien would want talking to a federal prosecutor, because your father, a year ago, started figuring things out. Not all of them, but enough of them. And Damien, as a way of making sure your father did not finish figuring them out, started making your father depend on him. Financially, cleanly, a loan here, a favor there. Quiet papers. Your father signed 2 things he should not have signed in the last 10 months, and he signed them because he was backed into a corner, and the corner was your wedding. Do you understand what I am telling you, Lena? She stared at him. You're saying, Bijan... I'm saying that your father, right this minute, is terrified of Damien in a way he cannot tell your mother about. And I am saying that when you call him in about 20 minutes, the correct thing to do is not to explain. The correct thing to do is to tell him you are safe, and to tell him that there is someone who is going to help him, and to ask him a single question that will tell me whether he is ready to come in or not. What question? I want you to ask him, Dad, did you sign the memo from Greaves? Greaves. Damien's lawyer. Your father will know what you mean. If your father says yes, you tell him to go to his office and put the memo in his inside jacket pocket and drive north on Route 9 and stop at the first gas station after the bridge and wait there, and someone from my firm will meet him. And if he says no, he is lying. But if he says no, we have a longer road, and you and I will drive back to him tonight together, and we will make him say yes. She was looking at him like she had never seen him before. Ryder, yeah. You have been working on my father. I have been working on your whole life, Lena. I told you. You asked for the truth. She pushed back from the table. She stood up. Her chair scraped across the pine floor. She walked into the living room. She stopped in front of the wood stove. She put her hand on the iron, which was cold. She did not turn around. Ryder. Yeah. I need you to sit in the kitchen for a few minutes while I stand in here. Okay. I am not running. I know. I am not about to do anything crazy. I know. I just need to stand in this room for a few minutes by myself. You understand? Yes. He did not move from the kitchen. She stood in the living room with her hand on a cold wood stove in a house that he had rented with cash a year ago, wearing a sweater a stylist had put on her, in a body that had just been told that her entire family, not just her fiancé, was a piece on a board that she had never been shown. She stood there for a long time. Outside, the pines moved in a low wind. Somewhere in the trees, a crow called, 2 notes, spaced, then nothing, then the crow again. She thought about her father. She thought about him at the breakfast table when she was 6, cutting her waffle into small squares because she would not eat it otherwise. She thought about him at her college graduation, his eyes wet, his hand gripping her shoulder too hard. She thought about him 3 Christmases ago, pretending not to notice that she had started crying during a perfectly ordinary conversation about the roast. She thought about him last night, telling her he was proud of her, and the way his hand had shaken when he had lifted his drink. He had known. He had known something. Not all of it. Not Valentina, not the ski instructor in Paraguay, not the woman before her. But something. A shape in the shadow. Enough to be scared, not enough to save her. And he had walked her to the front of the venue anyway. She turned around. Ryder was sitting at the kitchen table exactly where she had left him, his hands loose on the wood, his eyes on the window, not watching her, giving her the room. Ryder. Yeah. I'm ready to call him. He stood. He did not come into the living room. He walked to the kitchen counter and picked up a cordless phone from its cradle, and he brought it to the table, and he set it down in front of the chair she had been sitting in. You want me in the room, he said, or out of the room? She thought about it. In, but at the counter, not at the table. Okay, she sat down. She picked up the phone. She dialed her father's cell from memory. She put the phone to her ear. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and she was beginning to think it would go to voicemail when he picked up, and his voice, when it came through the line, was not her father's voice. It was a smaller voice, a voice she had never heard. Lena. Dad. Oh, honey. Dad, I'm okay. Oh, Lena. Oh, Lena. Honey, Lena, where are you? I'm safe, Dad. The hotel is... Damien is... He stopped. She heard him breathe. She heard him, across the wire, very carefully put something down. A glass, maybe. Lena, honey. Honey, are you alone? No. There was a long silence. Ryder, her father said. She almost dropped the phone. Dad? Is that you with Ryder Hayes? Dad, how do you... Lena. His voice broke and steadied. Lena, I need you to tell me right now, is Ryder with you? She looked across the kitchen. Ryder was leaning against the counter, his arms folded, his face perfectly still. Yes. She heard her father make a sound she had heard once at her grandmother's funeral. A short, choked sound, a sound that had nothing to do with the telephone, a sound that belonged entirely to the room he was standing in. Oh, thank... He stopped. He cleared his throat. He tried again. Oh, honey. Oh, honey. Dad. Dad, what is happening? Is he there? Put him on. Dad, put him on, Lena. Please. Just for 1 minute. Then I want you back. She lowered the phone. She looked at Ryder. He wants to talk to you. Ryder came around the counter. He took the phone. He held it to his ear. He did not speak at first. He listened. Yes, sir, he said. He listened again. Yes, sir, she's fine. And again. She's at the place I told you about. Lena's stomach dropped. No, sir, that hasn't happened yet. He listened for a long moment. His face was unreadable. I understand. Yes, tonight. I can have someone there in... Oh, yes, sir, I will. I'll put her back on. He held out the phone to her. His hand was steady. His eyes were not. She took it. Dad? Lena. Her father's voice was different now. It was the voice from the breakfast table and the graduation and the Christmas roast, and it was cracking, and he was not bothering to hide it. Sweetheart, listen to me. Listen to me carefully. I have known Ryder Hayes was watching over you for about 4 months. I did not know it was him until this morning. He stopped. He gathered himself. I am going to do what he told me to do tonight. I am going to come to where you are in a few hours. I am going to bring some things with me. I am going to tell your mother I have gone to the city on business. I am going to lie to her for the first time in 41 years of marriage, and I am going to— Dad? It's all right, honey. It is not all right. It's all right because you are alive. His voice was shaking now. It is all right because you are alive, Lena, and because you ran, oh my girl, you ran, oh, thank— He broke off. She could hear him across the wire, crying, not politely, not the way her father cried, the real way. You ran. You ran and you ran to the right man, and I did not know how. I did not know how to tell you. I did not know how to— Daddy, I didn't know how, sweetheart. Daddy, it's okay. It is not okay. I know. It is not okay, Lena. It will not be okay for a long time. I was going to walk you down that aisle this morning. She pressed the phone to her ear. She closed her eyes. She did not have any words because there were none, because the day had outrun every word she had ever been given. Dad? Yes? Come tonight. I'm coming. Don't tell Mom. I won't. Dad? Yes. I love you. I love you, Lena. I love you. I am so sorry, sweetheart. I am so sorry. I will be there tonight. The line went quiet, and then it went dead, and Lena Carter sat at a red laminate table in a kitchen that smelled of cedar and coffee, in a house she had never seen before today, and she held a cordless phone in her hand, and she did not put it down for a long time. Ryder did not move from the counter. Outside, the crow called once more, and then the woods went quiet, and the wind in the pines kept up its low, steady sound, and somewhere 60 miles to the south, in a ballroom at the Ashford Grand, 300 white chairs sat empty in front of an altar of ivory roses, and a string quartet had stopped playing 40 minutes ago, and a man in a tailored morning coat was standing in the center of the aisle with a champagne flute still in his hand, asking the room, with the first real edge of panic anyone had ever heard in his voice, where his bride was. For a long time, neither of them said anything. The phone sat between her palms on the red laminate. Lena could feel the plastic warming from her hands, and she could hear, inside her own chest, a sound that had been missing for a long time, the unsteady, rough sound of a person breathing in a way that actually did something. Ryder stayed at the counter. He had folded a dish towel at some point while she was on the phone, and he was standing there holding it, looking down at it like he had no idea how it had gotten into his hands. You told him about me, she said finally. I told him I was watching you. I did not tell him my name. That was 4 months ago. How? In a parking lot. Rest area on the turnpike outside Wyndham Falls. I followed him there one night when he was driving home from a board meeting. He got out to get a cup of coffee, and when he came back to the car, I was sitting in the passenger seat. He didn't run. He sat down in the driver's seat and he closed the door, and he said, "Are you here to kill me?" I said, "No." He said, "Then who are you?" I said, "Someone who has been watching your daughter for a long time and who needs you to start paying attention." He was quiet for about 2 minutes. Then he said, "I have been paying attention." And I said, "Not well enough." And he said, "I know." What did he do after that? He cried for about a minute. Then he asked if I was the man who was going to hurt her. I said no. He asked if I was the man who was going to save her. I said I was going to try. He asked if he could help. I said yes. I told him what I wanted him to do, which was nothing, which was to continue the way he had been living and to not tell your mother and to not tell you, and to sign whatever Damien put in front of him if it would keep the temperature down, and to wait. And he said— Ryder paused. He folded the dish towel over again into a smaller square. He said, "I have been waiting for somebody to come and do this for 20 years. I did not know I was waiting. I did not know I was supposed to." And then he said, "I'm sorry she is alone in this." And then he got out of my car and he walked back to his car and he drove home. And he never told me. No. And he never told Mom. No. And he let me— She stopped. She shook her head. He let me try on the dress. He let me do the whole thing. He was trying to keep you alive, Lena, same as me. He did not know how else. That is the sentence of the day. What is? He did not know how else. Every man in my life, my father, you, Damien has his own version of it. I did not know how else. She laughed, a small, bitter sound. I would like someday to meet a man who knew how else. Ryder did not answer. He set the dish towel down. Eat your eggs. They're cold. Eat them cold. Ryder, eat, Lena, please. I'm not asking you to forgive anyone. I'm asking you to put something in your stomach because I do not know when you last ate, and because you are going to need it tonight when your father walks in that door. She picked up the fork. She ate the eggs cold. They tasted like butter and salt and nothing else, and she ate them, and she drank the rest of the coffee, and she ate the piece of toast, and by the time she had finished, she was crying without particularly meaning to. Slow, quiet tears that ran down her face and dripped off her chin onto the plate and the table, and Ryder, mercifully, did not come over. He stayed at the counter. He watched her eat, and he let her cry, and he did not, for once in a day that had been full of it, reach for her. When she was done, she wiped her face with her sleeve. I want to take a shower. Towels are in the hall closet. Okay? There's a robe on the back of the bathroom door, and there's... He stopped. He looked embarrassed, which was a look she had not seen on his face since they were 17. There's a drawer in the bedroom with some clothes in it that should fit. I bought them a few months back. Not all of them. Some were yours, from before. I kept a few things. You kept my clothes. 3 things, Lena. A sweatshirt from the lake trip, a pair of jeans you left in my truck, a hair tie. That is all. I was not a creep about it. It was 3 things. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, to her own surprise, she laughed. Just once. A short, ragged sound. Her face was still wet. Ryder Hayes. Yeah. You kept my hair tie. Yes. For 7 years. Yes. In a drawer. In a tin. It was in a tin. Oh my. She put her face in her hands. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm not telling you this so you feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for you. Okay? I don't know what I feel for you. That is the whole problem. I don't know what any of this is. I don't know what is supposed to be true now. I knew who I was at 7 this morning. I was somebody. I was a somebody with a schedule. I had a dress and a seating chart and a paid-for honeymoon in Santorini and a job I was going to go back to on the 15th and an apartment full of things and a life. It wasn't a good life, Ryder. I know it wasn't a good life. But it was a life that I could answer questions about. I could answer the question, who are you, if a stranger asked me on an airplane? I have no idea how to answer that question right now. I don't know what city I live in. I don't know what I do for a living because I cannot go back there now. I cannot walk into that office. I cannot. I don't know my own last name. The passport in my duffel says Donovan. The sweater on my body belongs to a stylist I met 3 months ago. The house I am in is yours. The car I came in is yours. The clothes in the bedroom are yours, except for 3 things that used to be mine, which you kept in a tin. I am stripped, Ryder. I am standing in a kitchen with nothing at all. You have yourself. That is the most useless sentence anyone has ever said to me. I know. It is the kind of thing men say in books. I know. Don't say it again. I won't. She stood up. She wiped her face again. She picked up her plate and she carried it to the sink and she rinsed it and set it on the drying rack. And she stood at the sink for a moment with her back to him. And she watched a single bird on a branch outside the window hop once and go still. And she said, without turning, I'm going to take a shower. And then I'm going to lie down in the bedroom for an hour. And then I will come downstairs and we will sit at this table and we will figure out what happens next. Okay. Okay? And Ryder, yeah. Do not come upstairs. I wasn't going to. I know. The shower was scalding. She stood under it with her eyes closed for a long time, long enough that the pins from her hair fell out one by one and clinked against the enamel of the tub and swirled toward the drain. The water ran hot from a water heater somewhere in the basement that hissed and groaned every few minutes like an old dog in a dream. The soap was a plain white bar. The shampoo was a cheap grocery store brand that smelled faintly of green apple, the same brand her grandmother had used, and Lena pressed her forehead to the tiles, and she did not try to stop crying this time. She cried for her father. She cried for the boy who had left and for the man who had come back. She cried for the girl in the white dress. still hanging in Suite 1204, 60 miles south, slowly steaming to nothing in the breath of an air conditioner nobody was going to turn off. She cried for Marisol, who had, in all likelihood, walked back out of the Ashford Grand at exactly the time she had planned, carrying a garment bag full of a woman who had disappeared. She cried for her mother, who did not know yet, and who was going to find out in the worst possible way, and who would be telling the story for the rest of her life as a thing Lena had done to her. When she got out of the shower, her fingers were pruned. She wrapped herself in the robe on the back of the door, which was too big and smelled faintly of cedar like the rest of the house, and she walked across the hall to the bedroom, and she opened the drawer he had told her about, and she did not, for a moment, know what she was looking at. A stack of soft cotton t-shirts, folded. 2 sweatshirts. A pair of jeans in a size she had worn 5 years ago, and a pair in a size she wore now. Wool socks. Plain underwear, still in the packaging, from the kind of store she would not have been caught dead in a year ago. At the bottom of the drawer, under everything, wrapped in a square of tissue paper, was a faded navy sweatshirt with the logo of a summer camp she had gone to when she was 15, the one she had worn, eventually, through her entire junior year of college, the one she had left in his truck in August. Folded next to it, a pair of jeans with a tear in the left knee that she remembered feeling self-conscious about. And under the jeans, a small tin, a cough drop tin, the kind with a sliding lid. She picked it up. She opened it. Inside, on a square of white tissue, was a single hair tie, black, slightly stretched out, with a handful of long dark hairs still wound into it. She stared at it for a long time. Then she put it back in the tin. She slid the lid closed. She put the tin back under the jeans. She took out a t-shirt and a pair of the new jeans and a pair of socks. And she got dressed, and she got into the bed without pulling the quilt back. And she lay on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling, where a small brown water stain spread in the shape of a tilted rabbit. And at some point, without meaning to, she slept. She woke to the sound of a truck on the drive. The light in the room had turned the color of old pennies, which meant late afternoon, which meant she had slept 3 hours and not 1. She sat up too fast, and her head went light, and then it settled, and she listened. Tires on gravel. A door. Voices. 2 of them, low. One of them was Ryder. One of them was not. She got out of bed. She was barefoot. She went to the top of the stairs, and she stopped there, one hand on the banister, her heart doing the climbing stairs thing before she had climbed any, and she listened. "Had to come the long way," the second voice was saying. A man's voice, older, the accent of the county. "2 cars I didn't like on the highway, so I went Route 12. Took me an extra 40 minutes. Were you followed?" "Not that I could tell. I did the loop by the lumberyard twice. Nobody." The folder. Inside the bag. All of it. And the drives. "The drives or the copies?" "The drives are the copies. The originals are where you said." "Good. How is she?" A pause. "She's up, I think. I heard the floor." Lena came down the stairs. The man in the kitchen was Hal. He was exactly as she remembered him, and completely different. 68, maybe a little thinner than he had been at the diner. A head of thick white hair, neatly cut. A lined face that was tanned in the way of men who worked outside. He was wearing a flannel shirt and jeans and a canvas jacket, and he was holding a large duffel bag. And when he saw her, he set the bag down on the kitchen floor, and he took his cap off, and he held it in both hands in front of him, and his eyes, which had always been a very pale blue, went shiny. "Miss Lena." "Hal." "Well?" He cleared his throat. He looked for a second like he was not going to make it through the sentence. "Well, here we all are." She did not know what to do with her body. She stood in the doorway in a t-shirt and jeans and bare feet, with her hair drying in a long wet rope down her back. And she looked at a man who had refilled her coffee when she was 17 years old and in love and stupid and alive. And he looked at her, and after a second he opened his arms, and she crossed the kitchen and let herself be hugged by him. And he smelled like coffee and wood smoke and aftershave. And she pressed her face into the flannel on his shoulder, and she did not cry. Not this time, because she had cried enough already for one day, and there was going to be a long evening ahead of her. "You did good, honey," he said quietly, into the top of her head. "You did real good this morning." Marisol. Marisol is fine. Marisol walked her cart out of that lobby at 11:42 on the dot, got in her car, drove home. She's safe. She asked me to tell you, if I saw you, that she rinsed her brushes for a very long time. Oh. She said you would know what that meant. I do. She's a good one, that girl. She's 52 years old, Hal. Well, she's a good one. He let her go. He kept one hand on her shoulder for a second longer, a grandfather's hand, firm and dry. I've got your daddy coming in about 3 hours, he said. Ryder and I are going to set up at the kitchen table for a while first. Go over some things. You feel up to sitting with us? Yes? Sure? Yes. Atta girl. They sat at the kitchen table. Hal had brought the bag inside, and out of the bag he took a thick accordion folder, the kind with a button and string closure, bulging at the seams, and a manila envelope, and 3 small external hard drives in a zippered case, and a yellow legal pad and a pen. He set them out the way a mechanic sets out his tools. Okay, he said. Let me catch her up. Okay, Ryder said. Hal looked at Lena. Miss Lena, what I'm going to tell you over the next hour or so is most of what we have on your fiancé and his father. Not all of it, because some of it is the kind of thing where, if you know it, you become a problem for the people who don't want us to know it, and I'd rather you not be that problem. But most of it. I'm going to tell you the shape of the case, what we have, what we need, what the government wants, what the government doesn't want, and what we are going to ask of you. And I'm going to tell you what Ryder has done and what he has not done, because some of what he has done you are going to be mad about for a long time, and some of what he has not done I think you need to know, because a lot of people in your position think a man like this has done more than he's done, and I don't want you carrying that with you, okay? Okay? All right. He opened the accordion folder. Let's start with the father. For the next hour, Hal walked her through it. The shape of it was simple, the way an iceberg is simple. Damien's father had built, over 30 years, a private investment firm that on its face was a mid-sized wealth management company with about $4 billion in assets under management. The face was real. The face paid taxes. The face had offices in 3 cities and a human resources department and a Christmas party. Underneath the face, in a tangle of shell companies registered across 6 jurisdictions, was a second business, which had, at various times, moved money for a Russian gas oligarch, a family in Mexico that was not the kind of family anybody wanted to be the family of, a Turkish arms dealer who had been on and off a sanctions list for a decade, and most recently, a company in the Emirates that nobody could quite get a straight answer on. The Crestwood Harbor Port Authority expansion, the one Ryder had mentioned in the car, was not the biggest thing in the father's book. It was one of a dozen medium-sized projects being used to launder proceeds into domestic real estate. The Carter waterfront was the piece that had made it cleanest, which was why the marriage had been engineered so carefully, so far in advance. Your grandfather, Hal said, tapping a page, sold the last of the point to your father in '89. Your father has held it since. The veils started circling your family, quietly, slowly, the way they do. In about 2006, Damien's father and your father shared a board at the time. A charitable thing, a cancer research thing your mother chaired. That was the beachhead. Over the next 10 years, they became family friends. You remember that? I remember. Damien was around at events when you were, what, 16, 17? You didn't notice him, I know. He was 6 years older. He wasn't supposed to notice you either. But his father had decided. Your father did not know, not then. Your father thought it was family friends. That's how these things work, Miss Lena. They do not announce themselves. They become the air you breathe. Okay. When you turned 17, Damien's father made a couple of decisions. One of those decisions was to remove any possible obstacles to the match. He didn't think there were any serious ones. He was looking ahead, that's all. He didn't want surprises down the line. One of the things he flagged was... Hal glanced at Ryder. One of the things he flagged was the mechanic's nephew. Me, Ryder said. You. Right. So they sent 2 gentlemen to the garage to have a conversation, Ryder's conversation. Hal looked at her. That's how he ended up in Alaska. I don't want you to be sitting here thinking that was a thing he decided easy. I wasn't thinking that. All right, I just wanted that on the table. Hal flipped a page. So, 9 years go by. You grow up, you go to college, you date a couple of boys Damien's father thinks are acceptable. You come home. You get a job at that museum foundation thing. The father watches. The father waits. At a certain point, when you turn 28, the father decides it's time. He has Damien show up at the right party. He has Damien say the right things. Damien does what his father tells him to. Damien is not a stupid man, Miss Lena, but he is a raised man. You understand what I mean by that? Yes. A man raised by his father to be his father. He has been pointed at you his entire adult life. When he proposed to you in Positano, it was not a romantic decision. It was a sales closing. I know that now. You didn't then? No, I didn't. Okay? So, you get engaged. The father is happy. The father starts setting up the next phase. The next phase is the waterfront. The next phase involves your father signing, over a period of 2 or 3 years, a series of documents that transfer control of a specific parcel to a holding company that Damien's father controls through 3 other companies. Your father has been getting those documents, one at a time, for about 13 months. Some of them he has signed. Some of them he has not. The one he signed most recently, a month ago, is Hal pulled a document out of the folder. This one. He turned it so she could see. Lena did not read every word. She did not need to. It was 3 pages of legal paper, and her father's signature was at the bottom of the 3rd page in blue ink. And next to his signature, smaller, was the notary stamp. And next to the notary stamp, smaller still, was a second signature, Damien's, in a cramped angular hand. This one is the one that matters, Hal said. This one, with a couple of other things we already have, is enough. We hand this to the federal prosecutor in the Southern District next week, and the father goes away. Damien goes away right behind him. The crew goes away. Pavel goes away. Rollins goes away. Greaves, if he's smart, cooperates, and he walks with 8 years instead of 20. The entire machine goes into a box. My father signed it, Lena said, under duress. He still signed it. Yes. He's going to be a witness. He is going to be a witness. Yes. That is part of why he is driving here tonight. We are going to take his statement, and we are going to put him and your mother and whatever of your family wants to come into a protective posture for the next 6 months. Not what people mean by that on television. Not a new town and a new name. A quieter version. A house we choose. Some men we trust. A lawyer who answers when we call. It's not pretty, Miss Lena, but it's survivable. And after 6 months, we expect the risk profile to drop considerably. Because by then, the father and the son are in federal custody, and the crew has been rolled up, and the remaining business interests have been seized, and the people who would have come looking for you have too much of their own trouble to look for anyone. Okay? There is one more thing. Hal paused. He looked at Ryder. You want to take this one? No, Ryder said. You. All right. Hal turned the legal pad toward her. He did not write anything on it. He just folded his hands on top of it. Miss Lena, what we're going to ask of you is a little harder than what we're going to ask of your father. Your father has something to give. He has the documents. He has his signature. He has his story. What you have is different. What you have is what happened inside that house. What you saw. What was said to you. 12 days ago, 6 nights ago. The drawer. The phone. The conversation on the white sofa. The threat. We need that, Miss Lena. We need it in writing. We need it in a deposition. We need you to sit in a room with 2 lawyers and a stenographer and tell them every single word you remember him saying, not paraphrased, not cleaned up. And we need you to do it this week. Because the window to move against them is narrow, and they will know by tomorrow morning that something is wrong. If we wait a week, the father gets on a plane. If we wait 2, evidence disappears. If we wait a month, people die. People in this case. People who are alive right now because he has not yet decided to be sure. Lena said nothing. You don't have to answer tonight. I'll do it. Miss Lena. Hal. I'll do it. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tonight. I'll sit in any room you put me in. Her voice was flat and clear. He threatened my father. He has a woman in Lisbon who used to work for him. He has a dead woman in Colorado. He was going to... She stopped. She did not say it. I'll sit in the room. Hal looked at her for a long moment. He nodded once, slowly. All right, he said. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Here, I'll have the people here. I'll bring the stenographer. You will not have to leave this house. Okay? Lena. It was Ryder. She turned her head. You sure? Yes. It's going to be hard. Today was hard. Tomorrow will be less hard than today. Okay. Okay. She put her hands flat on the table. The light had changed outside again, gone deeper, and the kitchen was full of long, slanted light that made the papers on the table look warmer than they had any right to. She looked at Hal, and she looked at Ryder, and she looked, through the window, at a line of pine trees at the edge of a property she had not known existed 8 hours ago, and she said quietly, "What happens at the hotel?" Hal flipped his cap around in his hands. Right now? Right now. Right now, Miss Lena, your fiancé is in his presidential suite on the 14th floor. His father is on a flight from Miami, which is turning around at this moment and going back because someone told him to. His head of security, Pavel, is down in the basement of the hotel with 2 men looking at camera footage and trying to figure out how you left the building. His mother is in the ballroom with 300 guests, telling them, in a voice I would not wish on my worst enemy, that the ceremony has been postponed because the bride has taken ill. The guests are eating the appetizers. The string quartet has been paid and sent home. Your mother, he paused. Your mother is in the bridal suite with the hotel manager. She is looking for a note. She has not found one because there isn't one. The veil is in a garment bag that Marisol took to her car. The dress is still on the hanger. Your phone is on the vanity. He's going to think I ran. He knows you ran. He's going to try to find me. He already is. He has sent 2 men to your apartment in the city. He has sent one to your parents' house on the Point, who will be politely turned away by your father's oldest friend, a retired judge, who is expecting him. He has called the private number of the chief of police of Crestwood Harbor, who has told him, honestly, that no one has filed a missing person report. He is, at this moment, working the phones. He will work them for about 6 more hours. He will not find you. By the time he gives up, which will be sometime in the early hours of tomorrow morning, we will be deposing you in this kitchen. By the time he wakes up tomorrow and starts again, the prosecutor in the Southern District will have a call from a man whose name he respects. And by noon tomorrow, there will be a warrant. That fast because we have been ready. Ryder has been ready. We have not been waiting for you to run. We have been waiting for a door to open. Your message this morning was the door. And if I had not sent it, Hal hesitated. Ryder will tell you what would have happened. I already told her, Ryder said quietly from his side of the table. She knows. Then she knows, Hal said. They sat at the table for a while longer. Hal talked her through what tomorrow was going to look like, who would be there, what she would be asked, what she should not say, how long it would take. He talked her through what the next week was going to look like, the house she would be moved to, the name she would use, the quiet pause she would take from the job she could not go back to, and from the city she could not for a little while live in. He talked her through what they were asking of her father, which was more, in a lot of ways, than they were asking of her. He did not talk about her mother at all, except to say that her mother would be offered the same protection her father was being offered, and that her mother's choice, whatever it was, would be respected. Lena did not ask what would happen if her mother said no. She could guess. By the time the light outside had gone fully blue, Hal was standing at the counter making a second pot of coffee, and Ryder had set a can of soup on the stove, and Lena had moved from the table to the armchair in the living room with her knees drawn up and a throw blanket over her legs, and she was not, for the first time in months, thinking about the wedding. She was thinking about her mother. She was thinking about the look on her mother's face when the hotel manager had opened the bridal suite and Margaret Carter had seen the empty vanity chair and the dress on the hanger and the phone plugged in on the windowsill. She was thinking about how her mother, who had spent her entire adult life managing appearances, was going to manage this one. She was thinking about how for the first half of her life she had been afraid of disappointing her mother, and how for the second half she had been afraid of disappointing her mother in a way her mother would make her pay for, slowly, for decades, with small remarks at holidays and a certain look at Thanksgiving. She was thinking about the fact that she had run, and that she had been right to run, and that her mother, who had told her at 10:45 this morning that Damien is a good man, was never under any circumstances going to forgive her for being right. She thought about this for a long time. She thought about it until a pair of headlights swung into the gravel drive outside and threw long moving shadows across the wall of the living room, and a car door slammed, and she heard footsteps on the porch that she would have known if she had been blindfolded. Footsteps she had heard coming up the driveway of the house on the point every evening of her life for 20 years. And she stood up slowly, and the blanket slid off her knees onto the floor. And Hal crossed to the door and opened it, and Daniel Carter walked into the kitchen of a rented farmhouse at the end of a dirt road in a county he had never been to before. In a rumpled navy suit he had been going to wear to walk his daughter down an aisle, and he stopped inside the door and he saw her, and his face did the thing fathers' faces do when they have been holding something for a long time and have, for the first time in years, been permitted to put it down. "Dad? Lena." He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides. He took his daughter in his arms, and he held her the way he had not held her since she was 9 years old and had fallen off a horse at summer camp and broken her wrist, and she pressed her face into his shoulder, and he pressed his mouth into the top of her wet hair, and he did not say he was sorry. He did not say anything. He just held her, and she held him back, and Hal quietly closed the front door, and Ryder, at the stove, turned the heat down under the soup, and outside the window of the farmhouse the last of the blue light went out of the sky, and in Crestwood Harbor, 60 miles to the south, Damien Vale was sitting alone in a ballroom full of empty chairs, with an untouched champagne flute in his hand and a very specific kind of stillness on his face. And he was beginning, for the first time in his adult life, to understand that something had been taken from him. Daniel Carter held his daughter for a long time, and when he finally let her go, he did not let her go entirely. He kept one hand on her shoulder, and with the other he scrubbed his own face, hard. And when he dropped his hand, he looked like a man who had aged 5 years and 6 hours. His tie was gone. His shirt was open at the collar. There was a small dark stain on the cuff of his jacket that Lena recognized after a second as coffee. "I drove," he said, as if that explained it. "I just drove. I told your mother I was going back to the office to get the rings. I told the manager I needed air. I left my car in the valet at the marina, and I took one of the pool cars from the office because I didn't know what I thought. I thought someone would follow. I don't know if anyone did. I drove for a very long time before I called the number." "It's all right, Mr. Carter," Hal said quietly. "Nobody came after you. I've had a man on you since 11:50. You did fine." "Someone was following me?" "Someone was making sure nobody else was." Daniel looked at Hal and then at Ryder, and he shook his head slowly, like a man trying to clear water out of his ear. "I don't even know how to—" He stopped. He pressed his palm flat against his own sternum. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't!" Ryder said. "Young man, don't thank me, Mr. Carter. I am the reason your daughter spent the last year and a half engaged to a man who was going to kill her. I had the folder. I had it for a long time. I could have come to her 6 months ago. I could have come to you a year ago. I waited because I wanted the whole thing, and I convinced myself that getting the whole thing was worth the cost of every single day she spent in that apartment. That is a thing I have to live with. It is not a thing I want to be thanked for." "Ryder," Lena said. "It's true, Lena. I know it's true. That doesn't mean you have to say it standing in the kitchen. It's my kitchen." "Not tonight, it isn't." He looked at her. A muscle worked in his jaw. Then, slowly, he nodded, and he turned back to the stove, and he stirred the pot of soup. Daniel Carter watched this exchange with the expression of a man who had just realized the chessboard had more pieces on it than he had been told. He took his hand off Lena's shoulder. He looked at her, really looked at her, in her t-shirt and jeans and damp hair, barefoot on the pine floor of a stranger's kitchen. "You look," he said, and his voice cracked a little. "You look like yourself." "Do I?" "Yes, sweetheart. You look more like yourself than you have in a very long time." She did not know what to say to that. She sat down at the table. Her father sat down across from her. Hal, without being asked, poured coffee into a mug and pushed it across the table toward Daniel, and Daniel took it in both hands and held it, not drinking, like a man holding a candle in a church. "Dad?" "Yes. I have to ask you something." "Ask." "Did you love him, even a little, at any point? Did you think he was a good man and you were doing the right thing?" Her father closed his eyes. "At the beginning," he said. "For about 4 months, at the beginning, when he first came around. He was charming. He knew a lot about things I cared about. He told me a story about his mother that I believed. Your mother liked him right away. And I thought he is a little smooth for my taste, but maybe smooth is what she needs. Her last boy was such a mess. Maybe smooth is all right. Maybe I'm just old. And for 4 months, I let myself think that. He opened his eyes. They were red. Then after about 4 months, I started to notice. Little things. The way he talked to the valet. The way he looked at your mother when she wasn't looking at him. Small things. I started, without meaning to, keeping a list. And then his father and I had a lunch about 9 months in, and his father said something about the waterfront. And I realized, Lena, sitting at that lunch that this was not a boy who had met my daughter at a party. This was a boy who had been pointed at her. I did not know by who exactly. I did not know what the whole shape was. But I knew that afternoon that I had let a bad thing come into our house, and I did not know how to get it out. Dul sadi ma'oran san. Dad? And then I got scared, honey. I got scared, and I got quiet, and I signed a paper I should not have signed, and I signed another one. And I told myself if I just kept the peace until the wedding, we could get past the wedding, and then I could do something. I could hire a lawyer. I could take you to Europe for a year. He set the mug down. His hand was shaking. I did not have a plan, Lena. I had a list of cowardly half-plans. I was a coward. I let my daughter walk down an aisle toward a man I knew, in my bones, I knew was a bad man, because I was a coward. That is my confession. That is what I brought with me in the car tonight. Dad? No, let me finish. Let me finish it out loud. Because if I don't say it out loud now, I will never say it out loud, and a man ought to say a thing like this out loud once to the person he owes it to. I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. I thought I was protecting you. I was protecting myself. And I'm sorry, Lena. I am so sorry, sweetheart. I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. I'm not asking you to forgive me ever. I am saying it because it is true, and because I owe you it true. And I owe it to you true in this kitchen, in front of these two men. She reached across the table and took her father's hand. He started to cry. He cried the way men of his generation cry, which is quietly, almost apologetically, his shoulders shaking but his mouth mostly still, and Lena did not say anything, and Hal and Ryder, as if by agreement, both found places to be. Hal went out onto the porch to call someone. Ryder took the pot off the stove and carried it quietly into the living room and set it on the wood stove, which he had not lit, and he stayed there. For a long time it was just Lena and her father at the red laminate table. Their hands joined across the wood, and the wall clock ticked, and somewhere in the woods an owl called 2 low notes, and then called again. I love you, Dad. I love you, Lena. I love you so much. I should have, Dad? Yeah. I know. He nodded. He nodded and did not trust himself to say anything more. They ate soup at 10. They ate it out of mismatched bowls with saltine crackers Hal had found in a cupboard, and nobody talked much. And after the bowls were rinsed and stacked, Hal said he was going to sleep in the shed, which, it turned out, was not a shed, but a small converted studio with a camp bed and a kerosene heater. And Daniel, who had brought a small overnight bag, went up the stairs to the spare room Ryder had made up earlier, and Lena stood in the kitchen with Ryder, and for a long moment neither of them moved. You should go to bed, he said. I'm not tired. You should go to bed anyway. Ryder. Yeah. Are you going to sleep on that couch? Yes? It's too short for you. I've slept on worse. I know you have. That doesn't mean you should. He looked at her. His face was shadowed. The kitchen was lit by a single lamp over the table, and everything in the room had gone the color of tea. Lena, I'm not asking, she said, what you think I'm asking. I'm saying go sleep in the living room on the couch. I'm saying don't be a martyr about it. I'm saying if you stay up all night sitting in the armchair watching the driveway, you're going to be useless to everybody in the morning. Hal is out in the shed. My father is upstairs. I am going upstairs. Nothing is happening tonight that hasn't already happened. Sleep, Ryder. Okay? Okay. She went up the stairs. She stopped on the landing, one hand on the banister. She did not turn around. Ryder? Yeah. Thank you for coming. Lena, I know what you said about not thanking you, I am thanking you anyway. You don't have to say anything back. She did not wait for him to say anything back. She went into the bedroom, and she closed the door, and she got into the bed, and this time she pulled the quilt up over her shoulders, and she fell asleep almost immediately, and she slept the sleep of a woman who had not slept properly in 12 days, and she did not dream. In the morning, the lawyers came. They came in a black SUV that parked behind the shed, and they came out of the SUV in dark suits and carrying briefcases and looking exactly like lawyers, and there were two of them. A woman named Alicia Mendez, who was about 50 and had a gray streak in her hair and the quiet, flat eyes of a person who had seen worse mornings than this, and a man named Thomas Greer, who looked about 60 and carried himself like a retired judge, which, it turned out, was because he was one. They were followed by a stenographer, a woman in her 30s with a ponytail, who set up her small machine in the living room with the efficiency of someone who had done it 100 times. Lena sat in the armchair. Her father sat on the sofa. Ryder and Hal sat at the kitchen table with the folder, out of sight but within earshot, because Alicia had said it was better that way, that Lena would remember more and flinch less if she could hear their breathing from the next room but not see their faces. It took 4 hours. Lena answered every question. She told the story from the drawer to the phone to the conversation on the white sofa to the message she had sent from Suite 1204. She told them what Damien had said, word for word where she could remember word for word, and paraphrased where she could not. And the stenographer's small machine made its soft clicking rhythm, and Alicia Mendez wrote things down on a yellow pad. And every 20 minutes or so, Thomas Greer would say quietly, "Take your time, Miss Carter." And Lena would take her time, and she would go on. She cried twice. Once when she described the exact face Damien had made when he had told her, on the white sofa, that he would bury her father in court and then start on her mother. Once when she described the sound of him knocking on the door of Suite 1204 that morning. Other than that, she did not cry. Her voice was low and steady, and when she did not remember something, she said so. And when she was not sure of something, she said so. And when Alicia Mendez asked her, near the end, if she was willing to testify to all of it under oath in federal court, Lena said yes, and did not hesitate. When it was over, Alicia Mendez closed her pad and capped her pen, and she said, "Miss Carter, I have taken statements from a lot of people in rooms like this. Some of them turn into good witnesses, some of them don't. I want you to know that you are going to be a very good witness. Thank you. You are calm under pressure. I am exhausted under pressure. That sometimes looks like calm." Alicia smiled for the first time all morning. "Yes, it often does." They were gone by 2 in the afternoon. By 3, Hal's phone rang in his pocket, and he looked at it, and he said, "That's the prosecutor. I need to take this in the shed." "Oh, the SMS." He went out. He came back 20 minutes later. He said, "He's moving. Warrants are being drawn tonight. Father gets picked up tomorrow morning at Dulles when his plane lands. Son, probably tomorrow afternoon at his office in the city. Pavel they'll want to grab first because he's the risk. Greaves they'll call in as a courtesy and give him 2 hours to come in voluntarily because they need him to talk, and they know he will." "And us," Daniel said. "You," Hal said, "are leaving tonight. All 3 of you. I have a house about 90 miles from here. Different county. A woman who works for us lives next door. You will be there for about 6 weeks, minimum. Your mother, Mr. Carter, will be contacted tomorrow morning by a person I trust and will be offered the same arrangement. Whether she accepts is up to her." "She won't accept," Daniel said. "Not at first. She'll need to be angry for a while." "That's all right. We'll keep a man on her either way until she comes around or until the dust settles." "Thank you." "Don't thank me either, Mr. Carter. This is my job." They drove to the second house at dusk. Ryder drove. Daniel sat in the front. Lena sat in the back with a duffel bag at her feet that Hal had packed for her, and a small box on the seat beside her that contained the tin from the drawer upstairs, which Ryder had taken out of the drawer wordlessly and put into her hands on the porch, and said, "This is yours. It was always yours. You should have it." The second house was bigger. It was a shingled cape on a quiet road with a view through the trees of a small lake, and it had 3 bedrooms, and it was heated, and it had a working fireplace, and the neighbor on the south side was, as promised, a small, sharp-eyed woman in her 60s named Teresa, who introduced herself at the door with a casserole and a handshake that left no doubt that she was carrying a firearm under her sweater. They lived there for 7 weeks. In the first week, Damien Vale was arrested at his office at 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. 6 FBI agents walked into the lobby of the Vale Capital Group on the 32nd floor of a building overlooking the harbor, and they asked the receptionist politely to buzz them in, and the receptionist did, because the receptionist had been expecting them for 6 hours because Teresa had called her personally that morning, and by 3:09, Damien was in handcuffs in the elevator, and by 3:45, he was in a federal holding cell, and by that evening, the news was on every screen. Lena watched it on the small television in the den with her father beside her. Her father held her hand. He did not say anything. When the anchor said the words charges, including conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and pending further investigation, solicitation of murder, her father squeezed her hand once and let it go. Damien's father was taken at Dulles the next morning. Pavel, the head of security, was taken in a motel parking lot in New Jersey that afternoon. Rollins was taken in a grocery store. Greaves walked into a federal office at 8 in the morning of the third day with his lawyer and signed a cooperation agreement and was released on his own recognizance. He would, in the months that followed, hand over more evidence than every other witness combined, because Greaves had been keeping a second set of files for a decade, for exactly this day, because Greaves, Hal had explained to Lena privately, had been a coward in a different way, and had been waiting to be given an exit. Margaret Carter, Lena's mother, called her husband on the afternoon of the 4th day. Daniel took the call in the kitchen. Lena did not listen in. She went and sat on the dock at the edge of the lake in a wool coat and watched a pair of mergansers fish along the reeds. And when her father came out to the dock an hour later, he sat down next to her and he said, "She's coming. Teresa's going to pick her up tomorrow." "She's coming here." "Yes." "Dad, I know, sweetheart. But it is going to happen, and I thought you should have time to prepare." "She's going to be angry." "Yes, she is going to be very angry. She is going to be angry at me, mostly, because she has to be angry at somebody, and I am the one whose fault it is going to make the most sense to be angry at, and she is going to be right. She is also going to be angry at you. For a while. I want you to understand that. Not because you did anything wrong, because it is easier for your mother to be angry at you than to be afraid for you. She does not know what to do with fear. She has never known." "I know. Be patient with her if you can." "Dad, I don't know if I can." "I know you don't. I'm asking anyway, not for her, for you. A year from now you will be glad you did." Lena did not answer. She watched one of the mergansers dive, and she watched the water close over the place where it had been, and a long moment later she watched it surface 20 feet away with a small silver fish in its beak, and she thought about how some things, when they go under, come back up, and some things don't, and you mostly don't get to choose which is which. Margaret Carter arrived the next day in Teresa's car, in a cream-colored coat and dark glasses and a face set like a wall. She walked into the Cape Cod. She looked at the kitchen, she looked at her husband, she looked at her daughter. She did not cry. She did not hug anyone. She said, "I would like a cup of tea, please," and Daniel made her one, and she sat at the kitchen table and drank it in silence for 15 minutes, and then she said to Lena, without looking up, "Your grandmother is going to hear about this from the newspaper. Do you understand that?" "I understand. Your grandmother is 91 years old." "I know, Mom. She had one good thing to look forward to this fall. It was your wedding that is now gone, that will not be replaced." "I know. I hope you think it was worth it." "I do." Margaret looked up. Her eyes were dry and bright and very tired. "Well," she said. "Good." And that was for 2 weeks the only conversation Lena Carter and her mother had. It got better, slowly. It got better the way a bruise gets better, in blooms of color that you only notice when you look in the mirror on a Tuesday and realize the edges have gone yellow. Margaret spent the first 2 weeks in her bedroom, with the door closed, emerging for meals and for walks with Daniel along the lake road. She did not speak to Lena, and she did not speak about Lena, and she did not, in Lena's hearing, speak the name Damien Vale. In the 3rd week, Margaret came downstairs one evening when Lena was sitting on the sofa reading a paperback Hal had brought her, and Margaret sat down on the other end of the sofa, and she said, "What are you reading?" Lena showed her the cover. "Is it good?" "It's all right. Good enough for the couch." "Yes." Margaret nodded. She did not say anything else. But she sat on the sofa for 40 minutes, and when she got up to go back to her room, she put her hand on top of Lena's head, briefly, the way she had when Lena was a child and had a fever, and she did not say anything, and she went upstairs. 2 days later, she asked Lena to go for a walk. They walked for an hour. They did not talk about the wedding. They talked about a woman who had lived next door to them when Lena was 7, who had died the previous summer, whose funeral Lena had not known about. They talked about a recipe Margaret had been trying to find. They walked back to the house in a companionable, almost silence, and Margaret, stopping on the porch before going in, said, "Lena." "Yes." "I do not know how to be sorry for something this big." "I know, Mom. I am going to try." "That's enough." "It is not enough." "For now it is." Margaret looked at her for a long moment, and her eyes did a thing Lena had not seen in 25 years, a soft, breaking thing. And then her mother nodded, sharply, once, and went into the house. It was, in its way, the beginning. Ryder did not live with them at the second house. He came, but he stayed in Teresa's guest room, and he did his work from her kitchen table, and he came over for dinner most nights, and he went back across the yard at around 10. Lena saw him every day, and she did not know, for a long time, what she was supposed to do with him. One night, about 5 weeks in, he came over with a small stack of photographs in a manila envelope. He sat down at the kitchen table across from her. Her parents had gone to bed. The wood stove was ticking in the corner. "I brought you something," he said. "What?" "Not evidence, not paperwork, something else." He slid the envelope across the table. She opened it. Inside were 12 photographs. They were not of Damien, they were of her. Her laughing at an outdoor table at a restaurant she recognized as being in the West Village in the summer 2 years ago. Her walking a dog she had sat for one weekend. Her carrying groceries up the steps of her old apartment. Her sitting on a bench in Central Park, reading. Her bundled in a scarf at an ice rink she had gone to with a work friend. Her caught in a long lens at a gallery opening she had forgotten she had attended. Her again in a coffee shop, looking at something just out of frame, with an expression on her face she did not recognize, but that the photographer had clearly loved. She stared at them for a long time. "Ryder, I know. Ryder, these are... I'm going to tell you the truth about them, okay? And then I am going to get up and go back to Teresa's, and you can do whatever you want with them. You can burn them, you can keep them, you can throw them at me. You can never speak to me again. That's the deal." Okay, these are what I had. For 7 years. Not the file on Damien, not the paperwork. These are what was mine. I took some of them. Some of them I paid a man to take. Some of them came to me because a friend I will not name was near you with a camera. The reason I kept them, Lena, is not because I was watching you. It is because I needed some days to remember you were alive. That is the whole truth of it. That is the only reason. You were for a long time the thing I was protecting, and sometimes a man who is protecting a thing needs to see the thing, or he stops remembering why he is doing it. Bachit. Ryder, I am not showing them to you because I want anything from you. I am showing them to you because you asked for all of it, the whole 7 years, no clean version, and this is the part that is hardest for me to show you, because it is the part where I am not noble. It is the part where I am a man who missed a woman so much, he kept a stack of pictures of her laughing in a coffee shop so that he could sit in a hotel room in a city he didn't live in and look at them at 3 a.m. when he couldn't sleep. That is not a dignified thing. It is not a good thing. It is a thing. She did not answer for a long time. She went through the photographs again. She looked at the one in the coffee shop, the one where she was looking at something off frame. She looked at the way the light fell on her own cheek. She looked at her own hand around a cup. Ryder. Yeah. This one, in the coffee shop. Do you know what I was looking at? No. I was looking at a man at the next table. He was reading a book I had been meaning to read. I was trying to see the cover. Oh, I thought of you that morning. He did not answer. I didn't know I was thinking of you. I thought I was thinking about something else. I was thinking about how I missed the feeling of wanting to read a book. I was thinking, who was I when I used to care about reading a book? And now I'm looking at this picture and I know. I was the person who sat in the cab of your uncle's truck when I was 17 and told you I wanted to major in comparative literature. I had forgotten that. I actually forgot, Ryder. I forgot what I wanted to major in. I had to remember it this way, by looking at a photograph you took of me trying to see the cover of a book I didn't end up reading. Babam. Matosin. She set the photographs down. She put her hands flat on the table, on top of them. I'm not ready, she said, to know what I feel about you. I just want you to hear me say that. I am not ready to decide. I'm not going to fall into your arms because you saved my life. I'm not going to fall out of your arms because you kept pictures of me in a hotel room. I do not know what I am going to do. I need a long time. I need a year, probably. I need to live somewhere, on my own, with my own name, and a job I picked, and a door that locks, before I know anything about what happens after that. Yes. Are you going to wait? Yes. Do not tell me yes the way you said it 7 years ago. I am not telling you yes the way I said it 7 years ago. What are you telling me? I'm telling you that I'm not going anywhere. I'm telling you that if you call me in a year, I will answer the phone. I'm telling you that if you do not call me in a year, I will not call you. I am telling you that the only thing I am going to do from now on is what you ask me to do, and that I am going to stop trying to arrange your life around you without you knowing. That part is over, Lena, I promise. Not the 7 years ago kind of promise, the new kind. What is the new kind? The new kind is, if I break it, you walk away. And I do not come looking for you, and I do not send a helicopter, and I do not stand in the back of a ballroom. I go home. I drink a beer. I live with it. She looked at him for a long moment. That's the new kind. Yes. Okay. Okay. He stood up. He did not reach for her. He walked to the door and he put his coat on, and at the door he stopped and he turned around. Lena. Yeah. I don't know if I get to say this. Say it. I'm glad you sent the message. Me too. He nodded. He went out. The door closed behind him. Lena sat at the kitchen table for a long time, with 12 photographs of herself spread out in front of her, and she did not cry, and she did not burn them, and eventually she slid them back into the envelope, and she put the envelope in a drawer, and she went upstairs to bed. Damien Vale pleaded guilty 8 months later, on the morning his trial was supposed to begin, because his father had pleaded guilty 2 weeks before him, and because Greaves had handed over 3 hard drives the grand jury was going to hear about, and because at that point his own lawyer had told him that the best remaining version of his life was 32 years with the possibility of parole at 26. He took the deal. His father took a harder one. Pavel went away for 18 years, Rollins for 11. The firm was seized. The houses were seized. The art on the walls was seized. The boat, which Damien had named after a woman who had died in a rental car in Colorado, a detail that Alicia Mendez worked into a sentencing memorandum in a way that made a federal judge remove her glasses and put them down on the bench for a full minute before continuing, was seized. Lena testified at Damien's sentencing. She wore a gray dress and flat shoes, and she did not look at him when she spoke, and she did not look at him when she sat down, and when she walked out of the courthouse, her father was waiting for her on the steps, and her mother was waiting for her in the car. And her mother, for the first time in a year, reached across the console and took her daughter's hand and held it the whole way home. The year Lena had asked for turned into 16 months and then into 20. She moved to a small city she had never lived in before. She took her grandmother's name. She got a job at a public library, which paid less than 1/10 of what she had made in the city, and she lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above a bakery, and she read books again, and she made new friends who did not know what her last name used to be, and she went to therapy on Wednesdays, and she got a dog from a shelter, a small mutt with one ear up and one ear down, and she named the dog Dottie, after a waitress in a town she could not go back to. She thought about Ryder. She thought about him a lot. Some days she was angry at him, and some days she missed him, and some days she thought about him the way a person thinks about weather, without heat, just noticing. She did not call him. She did not email him. She did not look him up. She knew, through Hal, who called her on her birthday each year, that he was alive, that he was working, and that he was, as he had promised, staying where he was. That was all she asked Hal for. In the 13th month, she wrote him a letter and did not send it. In the 20th month, she wrote him another letter and sent it. The letter was 4 pages long. It said a lot of things, and most of them were not the point. The point was on the last page. The point was that she had, 2 weeks before, sat on a bench in a park in the city she had moved to, and she had watched a man walk a big friendly dog past her, and she had thought, for no reason, of the cab of a pumpkin-colored truck, and of a boy who had asked her what she actually wanted, if no one was watching, if no one was making the list, and she had realized, sitting on that bench, that she finally had an answer to that question. She had an answer she had made herself, an answer she had not been told, an answer that did not include him, not yet, not necessarily, but that had a shape. And the shape was hers. And the shape was big enough to include a person, if a person was the kind of person who would stand beside it instead of above it. I am writing to you, she wrote, to tell you that I have the answer now. Not because you waited, not because you saved me, because I finally sat down and thought about it on my own. I'm not writing to tell you what the answer is. I am writing to tell you that I have one. If you want to hear it, you can come. You can come to the address on the envelope. You can come any Saturday in the next month. I will be at a cafe called Meridian at 10 in the morning. It is a block from my apartment. I go every Saturday. I will be there whether you come or not. Do not come with a plan. Do not come with a speech. Come, if you want to. As a person, I might decide to know. She mailed the letter on a Monday. On the following Saturday at 10:07, Ryder Hayes walked into a cafe called Meridian in a small city he had never set foot in, and he saw her at a table by the window with a cup of coffee in front of her and a book open and a small mutt sleeping at her feet. And she looked up, and for a second she did not smile, and then she did, and it was a small and real and particular smile. And he crossed the cafe, and she watched him come, and he sat down across from her, and he said, "Hi. Hi. This is a nice place." "It's my place." "Okay. This is Dottie." "Hello, Dottie." Dottie wagged her tail once without opening her eyes. "Do you want coffee?" Lena said. "Yes." "Go order it yourself. They have a thing about table service." He smiled. For the first time, really. He went to the counter. He ordered a coffee. He paid with a $5 bill, and he put the change in the tip jar, and he came back to the table, and he sat down, and he looked at her, and he waited, and he did not, for once, fill the silence. "I'm not ready to be anybody's anything," she said. "Okay. I'm just starting to be mine." "Okay. I don't know, Ryder, what this is. I don't know what we are. I don't know if we are anything. I don't know if in a year I will look at you and know, or if I never will. I don't know if I want to know." "Okay. I don't want you to plan anything. I won't. I mean it. No houses, no lawyers, no files, no tins. No tins. If you want to see me, you come on a Saturday at 10 to this cafe. You sit down, you buy your own coffee, you do not bring me anything, you do not fix anything, you do not rearrange anything. You sit here, and you talk to me like a person who wants to know me, and if I decide one Saturday that I would like you to come back the next Saturday, I will tell you. And if I decide one Saturday that I would not like that, I will tell you that too, and you will not come back, and that will be the end. Okay? Can you live like that?" "Yes. Really, really." She looked at him for a long time. His hair was a little longer than it had been the last time she had seen him. There was more gray in it than she had expected. The small scar at his temple was still there. His hands, on the table, were still. He was not smiling, and he was not trying to. He was just there, across from her, drinking coffee he had bought himself, with nothing in his pockets and nothing on the table between them but the 2 cups and her book, and the small breathing shape of Dottie under the chair. She reached across the table. She took his hand. She held it for about 3 seconds. Not longer. And then she let it go, and she said, "Tell me what you've been doing for the last 20 months. He told her. But they married 3 years after that Saturday, on a weekday in April, in the backyard of a house they had bought together and were still painting. Her father walked her down an aisle that was a path made of wooden boards laid over a lawn that had not fully come in yet. Her mother, who had, in the intervening years, learned a few things about fear, wore a lavender dress and did not cry until the end. And then she cried hard, and Daniel cried too. And Margaret let him cry against her shoulder, and held him, and patted his back, and Lena watched her parents from under a small white trellis Hal had built for them the weekend before, and she thought, the people I came from are still here, and they are not the people they were, and that is a thing I did not know you could have. Hal gave a short toast. He said, I've known Miss Lena since she was a teenager who ordered her eggs the wrong way, and I've known this young man since his uncle used to send him to pick up pie on Sundays, and I have been waiting for about 30 years, give or take, to say what I'm about to say, which is that these two crazy kids finally figured it out. Them. Laughter. Not because anybody saved anybody. Not because anybody deserved anybody. Just because they sat down across from each other one Saturday and they bought their own coffee and they started over. That's the whole of it. That's the only part that matters to Lena and Ryder. Bosi basitikiti to Lena and Ryder. Dottie, by then almost 8 and slower in the hips, lay under the head table and ate bits of cake from a child's hand and did not get up. They danced. Badly. Ryder had never danced. Lena had been taught to dance by a woman her mother had hired when she was 12, who had also taught her how to pour champagne and how to seat people at a table. And Lena had gotten rid of all of it except some of the dancing, because the dancing, it turned out, was the only part of it that had been for her. They did not have a helicopter. They did not have a string quartet. They did not have 300 guests. They had 40. Marisol was one of them. She flew in from the coast, and she brought a small white bag, and in the bag was a hair tie, which she pressed into Lena's hand in the kitchen an hour before the ceremony. And she said, I got this out of the tin. I steamed it. It is clean now. I wanted you to have it today. Lena wore it. Nobody knew. That was the point. At the end of the night, after the cake and the toasts and the small, inexpert dancing, Ryder and Lena sat on the back step of their own house in their wedding clothes with their shoes off and Dottie between them, and they did not talk for a long time. Finally, Lena said, Ryder, yeah. Do you know what I wanted to major in when I was 17? Comparative literature. Yeah. You told me once, in my uncle's truck. I know. You gonna go back and do it? No, I don't need to anymore. I think I just needed to remember I wanted it. Okay. I wanted you to know I remember now. I know, Lena. I know you know. They sat on the step. Somewhere in the yard, a neighbor was putting out a trash can, and a dog was barking 2 streets over, and a plane was going over, very high, with its lights blinking, and the spring night smelled of wet earth and new grass. And Lena Carter, who had once locked herself in a bridal suite 2 hours before her own wedding and sent a message to a man she had not seen in 7 years, sat on the back step of a small painted house with the man who had come to get her, and with the woman she had become on her own, and she did not need to be saved from anything anymore. That, in the end, was the part she had gotten right. Not the running, not the message, not even the answering. The part where, somewhere along the way, between the bridal suite and the farmhouse, and the cape on the lake, and the apartment over the bakery, and the cafe called Meridian, she had stopped waiting for a man to decide her life was worth saving, and had, one morning, at 10:15, on her own, with her own hand, on a phone she had bought with her own cash at a gas station in a town she was about to leave, decided it herself. The rest was just what came after. And what came after, as it turned out, was a life.